Welcome to our annual Prepare Workshop. Planning, resources, education, personal arrangements for realistic expectations. Whether you are joining us virtually or archived, we commend you for your proactive decision to be a part of this experience, and we know that it will be helpful to you and your loved ones if you apply the knowledge you gain. Let us pray. Father God, we thank you for this opportunity. We thank you for the presenters. We thank you for those who have come to gain information and insight. Bless us all with knowledge and wisdom, strengthening all families and communities, because we are prepared for the inevitable. We pray all this in Jesus' name, amen. I always like to begin this workshop with giving a little history behind it. We pay tribute to the person through whom this was birthed, our dearly departed sister, Reverend Darlene Thomas McGuire, affectionately called Reverend D. She was concerned that people often come to the end of life without having made adequate plans and preparations, creating stress for themselves and their loved ones. Valuing education, she proposed this workshop to give people the tools and access to resources, so her legacy lives on. We also want to pause to remember one who was an important part from the beginning of this planning team, Reverend Willis Hickerson Sr., we called Uncle Willis affectionately. While he also has gone home to be with the Lord, and we still feel that loss, we thank God for the years we experienced his presence, his wisdom, and his humor. Now, let us begin with our first group of panelists. Panel number 1 consists of information in the fields of medical, advanced directives, and legal. And we have presenting Dr. Heather Burney, Sister Angela Beamer Ratliff, and Attorney Geraldine Sumter.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Heather Burney, Dr. Heather Burney. I'm a staff family doctor with Atrium Health. And my task today, this morning, is to talk about the medical impact of preparing for end-of-life decisions. This took on a much more personal thing for me. I've done this Prepare Conference several years now. But this year was different because I personally had to go through these life decisions with my mother, who passed away in November. And let me tell you, it was such a comfort to me and my family because she had been to prepare. We'd had these conversations. And so the first thing I just want to tell you, although these conversations are incredibly difficult, you don't want to think about the end of life. You don't want to think about having to make decisions for your family members. It is so helpful to actually have the conversation around the dinner table and know what the person's wishes are, and to talk about what their wishes would be. We had those conversations, and so when we had to make decisions, my sister and I, we had comfort and we had peace. Although we were allowing my mother to transition, we knew what her wishes would be about extending her life beyond what the doctors thought was reasonable. And so what I want to encourage you is to, number one, it is very difficult for us in the medical profession to turn it on and turn it off. When we're having conversations with each other, we use a lot of lingo, we use a lot of language, and a lot of shortcuts that we know what they all are. When we're having conversations with families, one of the things I want to encourage you to do is just demand real conversation. If you don't understand something, stand up for yourself. Advocate for yourself. If there's somebody in the family that's medical, have them be the person that's going to do some of that translation. But honestly, you can also demand that the doctors stop, that the doctors slow down, that the doctors make the conversation and explain things in terms that you understand. And you can ask questions until you understand. Really, I don't want you to be embarrassed about saying, I don't get it. I don't understand. What does that mean? And so just making sure that the doctors use words that make sense to you and that help you understand the situation that your family's in. Some of the things that people have had to go through in this COVID environment, it's a little bit better now than certainly last year, where they're allowing family members to be a part, coming to the hospital. You know, there were times we all remember where people were transitioning alone. Family members weren't allowed to be at the bedside. They were on FaceTime if you were lucky, if the nurse would allow it. Or the medical team would allow it. So, you know, we've made some transitions from a medical standpoint, but it's still just so important as a family that you're having these difficult conversations and that you're making sure that you understand what things that your family members would want. You want to make sure that you understand the difference between a lot of this medical jargon that we use. A lot of times people are confused about what being brain dead is versus being in a coma. This is something we had to decide for my mom, is that she was brain dead. And so as we were in the hospital and noticing, you know, the things that can be confusing to the eyes, right? So, you know, is she breathing? Is she breathing on her own? Did she just take a breath? Did she blink? I think she blinked. And those things can be confusing when people don't understand that there's levels in the brain. And so you need to understand that the higher functioning of the frontal lobe, as we say, or the higher functioning areas of your brain are no longer working. But the lower functioning areas of your brain that can control a blink or a breath, those areas might work, but understanding even the perception of pain, that's something that you want to, is my family member in pain? Can he or she perceive pain? So those things are confusing and difficult to understand, but understanding that when you're brain dead, when the higher functioning areas of your brain are no longer working, we don't think that the person can perceive pain. One of the things that was also important for us in going through this experience is that although I understood all the medical situations, I always said in my prayers especially that, Lord, I leave room for your miracle. I know what these medical folks are saying, but I'm leaving room for you. That if you decide that my mother wakes up now, I know she can wake up now. And so, you know, a lot of times I think in the medical profession we don't understand or we don't leave room for that family members could be experiencing that. And, you know, God allowed my mother to transition, but it was something just to be in that situation, making decisions about whether if you want the person to be on a ventilator. Those are important things to understand. If they can't breathe on their own, do they want a tube to help them breathe artificially? Those are important things to understand. There are people that have lung conditions that if we place them on a ventilator, it would be difficult, almost impossible, for them to no longer be on a ventilator. So that's something to have a conversation about. Something to also have a conversation about is what should happen or what you would want to happen if you stopped breathing, if your heart stopped beating. Most of us have never been in what we call a code, and it's brutal, it's hard. I've definitely, in my past, I've heard ribs breaking. I've heard people, when you have to press to do chest compressions, and you've got a frail elderly person, it can be a really gruesome, experience to try to make sure that you're getting that blood to the person's brain during those periods of time. So you want to have those clarifying conversations about, do you want chest compressions? Do you want to be put on a ventilator? And then also, which is something that people don't think about often, is do you want to be on a feeding tube? Do you want artificial nutrition? And there's different ways to get that. There are temporary artificial nutrition that you can get through an IV. Much easier, probably in the hospital, you're going to have an IV in. But do you want to go as far as having a feeding tube? So there's no, you're not eating, but you're getting nutrition through a feeding tube that they can put directly into your stomach. So having that conversation with your family member about whether they would want to have artificial nutrition. So those are some important conversations to have. I know that other people are going to talk extensively about advanced directives and making sure that if you have an advanced directive, you really want your doctor to know about that. Making sure that those advanced directives are part of your chart. I always try to make sure that I'm having those conversations with people. If you have those documents, I want to see those documents. I want to make sure that your wishes are known. And then for us to have a conversation with your primary care doctor when nothing's going on, when you are feeling fine. And so that you can clarify for your doctor, because sometimes if the family members won't make a decision, or if their family members are not sure, they're coming to us in the primary care world. Did you ever talk to your patient about this? Do you know what their wishes might be or what their wishes would be in this situation? You want to have the conversation not just with your family, but also with your doctor. I'm hoping you have a primary care doctor and encouraging you to establish those relationships before you end up in an end-of-life situation, so that you can have a relationship that's long-term, so that your doctor can have some sense of what your wishes might be. So I just want to wrap up in saying that I just want to encourage you to be uncomfortable with the people that you care about the most. Sunday dinner can be about a lot of things, but making this step to attend, prepare, and then going the next step to having this conversation, not just, most of us, we think about having these conversations with our elders, but I've had situations where parents have to make decisions about their children. And so having a full circle family conversation about what your wishes might be, even when you're 19. I had a family that a 19-year-old got hit by a car right out here on Beatties Ford Road, actually, several years ago. And so this mother had to make a decision about her child. So not just with grandma, but also with everyone in the family, talking to your spouse and your partner or life partner. And then if you're unpartnered, if you're not married, you got to know what the succession plan is, right? Who are they going to talk to? Who's going to be the person that speaks for you? Make sure it's somebody that you trust, that you, again, have had this conversation with, so that they know what your wishes are. And so if that is a trusted family friend, then let it be that person. It doesn't have to be the person that you designate on these documents, doesn't have to be biologically related to you. It just needs to be somebody that you trust, somebody that you trust is going to do what you would want, and not allow the emotions of the moment to take over the moment, which is why you want to have these conversations early and often. Thank you.
Thank you for inviting Novant Health's Choices and Champions to the Prepare Conference. We are honored that you continue to think about our participation and contribution to this amazing event. My name is Angela Beamer Ratliff. I am the Regional Coordinator for Advanced Care Planning with Choices and Champions in the Greater Charlotte market. Prepare is an action word, and I truly appreciate this opportunity to provide you with some information that you'll have the ability to act on. So you will have a few assignments during this talk. So first action assignment is for you to think about your health care journey. And when you think about your health care journey, I want you to think about wellness, to illness and recovery, to chronic and serious illness, then end of life. What are some of your concerns or fears? What are some of the health conditions that may run in your family? Are your fears or concerns connected to those? Or is your concern that if you think about it or talk about it out loud, that it will happen to me? And that is something I hear from people of every background, race, faith, culture. Or are you at a point in your life where you have no fears or concerns? And that's okay too, because this presentation is for you as well. Another part of the definition of prepare includes being willing to act. So my second goal is to empower you with information and tools you'll need in order to act. You'll be able to use the tools I talk about today and discuss. And after the presentation, you'll have an opportunity to come to my Zoom room and provide me information if you would like an entire advanced care planning toolkit. It will include the information I have today, as well as some other resources that you may need. So let's get started. What is advanced care planning? Advanced care planning is a process of identifying the people you trust to make decisions for you if there's ever a time you're unable to make them for yourself. So let's think about that. If you have a pen, a piece of paper, or if you want to kind of roll some names around in your head to keep in mind, write those people's names down. The ones you believe you can trust to make healthcare decisions for you. And I want you to think about the times of when people make healthcare decisions, because again, you have a whole healthcare journey from wellness to end of life. And more times than not, there will be times when you're younger, and younger is a relative term. I know some 90-year-olds that are young. More times than not, there will be a time where you'll have had a procedure in your late teens, early 20s, wisdom teeth taken out under anesthesia, 20s, 30s. You could have gallbladder appendix issues and have to have a procedure to have that removed. 45, 50, you're talking about colonoscopy. Some of these things are pretty routine types of procedures. Even orthopedics. Orthopedic surgeries can happen at any point in your healthcare journey. And some of those are illness or healthcare condition to recovery. So who did you take with you? I mean, if you've had some of those procedures, who did you take with you? Is that the person you trust? Did that person listen to the discharge instructions and you were able to ask them questions after you've recovered from your anesthesia? Did they do a good job in filling you in about what happened and what the surgeon said? So let's talk about some characteristics of the people that I'm talking about. First, these need to be people who respect your values and beliefs, even if they're different from their own. After all, you don't want someone who believes something totally different, but you can't trust them that they would actually follow through with the decisions you've already made. Again, someone who is trustworthy, right? We want to be them to be able to follow through with what you've already decided. Someone who knows you well and able to ask questions to understand your health condition and your medical history. Someone who cares about the facts and details when making decisions. We don't really want people to make decisions based on emotions. And someone who can work and communicate well with other people involved in your life and care. After all, communication is one of the biggest things that is important when dealing with a healthcare condition or healthcare crisis. So now that you have a few characteristics in mind, review your list, the ones you wrote down or the names you have in your head. Do you believe that you need to make some changes, some additions, or make more selections? Is that person or those people related to you? If so, how? This is a very important question. It's important because North Carolina has laws in place about who has the legal authority to make healthcare decisions for you. And you may be surprised about the decision-making order. So if you can please pull up that slide. So first, the first person we're going to go to make decisions is you. As long as you have the ability to make decisions for yourself, we're going to listen to you. Second, you see, is legal documents. The first legal document that we will look for is a healthcare power of attorney. And the healthcare power of attorney allows you to name the people you want to make decisions for you if you're unable to make them, and in the order you would want them to make them. We're not going to talk about the other two. We're going to go right to family. So third is the third category. 3A is spouse. So your legal spouse. North Carolina does not recognize common law marriage. And North Carolina also says if you are legally separated, that means you're still legally married. So there may be times where if you are unable to speak for yourself and you may be legally separated, that you may not want that spouse to actually make decisions for you. And we also have people that do not believe in divorce and have stayed married for years but have gone on to other relationships and lived separate lives. And in those cases, again, you're still legally married. The second category are parents and adult children. And when I say adult children, children 18 years and over. So if you have two parents still living and you have 3 adult children and you don't have a healthcare power of attorney in place and you cannot speak for yourself, those 5 people would need to come together to make a decision. And you can see if there are differences of opinion of what should occur. So it's important to make sure, again, that you are able to name the people you truly want to make decisions. If you don't have a spouse and you don't have parents or adult children, then the next category on 3C are your adult siblings. The same principle. They have to be at least 18 years and over, and if you have 10 siblings, the 10 of them have to get together to make decisions and come to a consensus, which could probably be very, very hard. If you don't have anyone, if you don't have a healthcare power of attorney, and if you have no family, then the next category is friends. Friends are grandparents, step-parents, stepchildren, uncles, aunts, cousins. It could be your best friend from high school. And it also includes people who we would consider as partners, people you may live with and have lived with but not legally married. Those are partners, and unfortunately they are in the category of friends because you're not legally married. So there are times when you have a partner, or a person has a partner, and they have family in every category except spouse. And they decide, okay, I want my friend to make decisions for me. You would really need, in order to leapfrog all of the family, you would have to complete a healthcare power of attorney to name the people you want in the order you want. The last category is the attending physician. And I say attending physician because this would not be your primary care doctor. This would be an emergency room doctor. This could be a critical care, intensive care doctor. Someone who may not know you and know your history or know you at all, except what they see in front of them at the time. And believe me, physicians don't want to have to make decisions for someone they do not know. And they don't know their wishes. They don't know their concerns. Someone they've never spoken to. The physicians are going to ask the social worker, find somebody. So we really don't want to ever be in that situation. But sometimes we are in that, hospitals are in that situation. So it's very important that you have information about who you would want to make decisions for you, or have a healthcare power of attorney on file with the hospital systems that you are associated with. So you may need to consider completing that healthcare power of attorney. And before taking the slide down, I also want you to consider who you will be making decisions for. Who would you be making decisions for? I know we're talking about you right now, but now let's kind of switch roles. Are you ready to make decisions for your adult siblings or your parents? Are you ready to make decisions for adult children who may have moved out of state for 5 or 10 years and may or may not have the greatest relationship with them? So it's really important to think about that and have conversations. So again, whether someone is making decisions for you or you are making decisions for someone else, it's important to have conversations. And so why are they important? Because the people you trust can't make decisions for you if they don't know what's going on with your health care and how it's impacting you. I've used my parents a lot when I come to prepare, and I guess I'll be using them again. Both of my parents had diabetes. One had to prick their fingers, take the insulin shots for several years. The other got diagnosed with diabetes, but was able to control the diabetes with diet, exercise, and lost weight. So even though they both have a diagnosis of diabetes, they both experienced, their experiences were very, very different. So we need to have those conversations to find out how those health conditions are impacting the people that we care about. There are a lot of people out there that also say that, well, my family knows what I would want. And I can assure you, as far as the healthcare decisions, they may not always know what you would want. We've seen families that grow up in the same household, and all of them have different opinions about a healthcare decision. And if you think about it, we've seen patients or families argue at the bedside about decisions. And so if they actually knew what you wanted, there wouldn't be those arguments. So please start having conversations about your healthcare conditions with the people you care about. And when I say that, it doesn't always have to be the person that might be making decisions for you, because there are times where there are people who will continue to communicate what they want but never write it down in a living will, which is another document, a legal document called part of the Advanced Directive that you will have access to. And the Advanced Care Planning Toolkit I can send. So sometimes it's those conversations with everybody in the family that allows everyone to come to the same decision, because they said, Mama said that she didn't want X, Y, and Z, and you know that. So this is the decision that we need to make, because this is her decision, and it's not ours. Again, can the person make decisions based on facts and not emotion? So Are you willing to let people in? We talk about it takes a village to raise a child, but it also takes a village to go through your healthcare journey. Whether you are helping someone else or someone is helping you, your healthcare journey can be very, very long, just like your life's journey. And along the way, you are going to need the people that give you strength around you. So I do challenge you to talk to the people. In the toolkit, I have a conversation guide to kind of help you along having those conversations. Also, take those people that you trust to appointments with you, medical appointments with you. One thing we know that through COVID, they actually don't even have to be present. We can call people, Skype, FaceTime while you're with the doctor and let the doctor know, hey, I need my support person to hear what you're going to say. They may also have some questions. These are people that might be making decisions for me, and I need them to understand what's going on. Because, again, we want to make sure that we know what you would want, and the people have confidence in saying and making those health care decisions on your behalf. So, advanced care planning is all about preparation and empowerment, so you can stay in control of your health care decisions. Lastly, again, if you would like a free advanced care planning toolkit that includes more resources than I discussed today, just pop into my Zoom room and place your name and email or mailing address, and we will be able to get that back to you.
Good morning. It is good to be back here at the park for this Prepare workshop. As usual, I want to acknowledge and appreciate all of the people who have worked so hard to put this program together year after year after year, and especially give honor to Dr. Dee McGuire, who initiated this process so many years ago, I don't remember when, but I am grateful that she had the foresight to do this. I know that over the years, many people have attended these programs and have gained information from this panel and the other panels. So today, I am going to talk to you about some end-of-life planning for your affairs. We'll talk about the power of attorney, we'll talk about a healthcare power of attorney, and we'll talk about the will. Now, in the other panel, you will hear about or have heard about the living will, so I won't spend any time on that. Now, many of us think about the need for a will to dispose of whatever assets we have, and we want to be sure that they get to the right person. But before we cross over, there are some things that we may need assistance with that are equally important as the will itself. One of them is the power of attorney. Now, the power of attorney is a legal document which allows you to designate another person to conduct business for you in the areas that you designate. The persons or person that you designate should be someone you trust, because once you've signed that document and it is filed with the Register of Deeds, that person has the legal capacity to do whatever you could do in the areas that you designate. So if you gave someone the authority to handle your banking affairs with this power of attorney, they could make deposits, they could write checks, they could close the account. All of that would be legal because those are things that you could do. And for that reason, I urge you to only select people who you trust, who you believe are honest, who you believe will act only in your best interest and not necessarily in theirs or someone else's, or be guided by someone else's. Usually it's a relative, but sometimes we don't have enough relatives who, number one, we trust, and number two, who themselves are able to handle their own affairs. There are lots of honest people who can't keep things straight. They can't balance their own checking account, so you don't want them in charge of balancing yours. They can't invest their own money, so you don't want those people to invest your money. Now, they may be good and helpful to you in other ways, but if they are not people who have the honesty, integrity, and the know-how to handle your affairs, you don't want them doing it. Certainly, you don't want somebody doing it whose credit is in the toilet, because you don't want them to put yours there. So give very good consideration to who you select. Now, this is a document that you can revoke at any time. So if you make a designation and you decide that this person is not the right person after you've had an opportunity to see them handle other affairs, or they themselves may become sick or disabled and you need to appoint someone else. They could leave town. So you can make changes to it as long as you are competent. In January of 2018, changes were made to the old power of attorney form. Those of you who have done this or who had done it before January of 2018 may recall that the power of attorney form was just one-page document that had 13 items that you could initial, sign, and get it filed. Well, the new document is several pages long, about 5 pages long, depending on options that you use. This is a more detailed document, but not necessarily a more difficult document. It just allows you to make more decisions about exactly how this power of attorney is going to be exercised. The document, if you had filed or filled out a power of attorney before January of 2018, that power of attorney is still valid. However, the new power of attorney does a few more things, and that is it allows you not only to appoint your first choice as the power of attorney, but it allows you to appoint successors also. And this document refers to the power of attorney as the agent. So you can appoint up to 3 or 4 if you want, and they operate in the order in which you designate them. So if you appointed one person as your power of attorney and they became disabled and not able to handle your affairs, or even if they pass on before you, if you have a second person designated, then that person is elevated to the position and can handle your affairs. Of course, this power of attorney gives you certain areas that you can designate: personal property, government benefits, taxes, bank accounts, personal property, handling your personal affairs, hiring agents for you. And you can designate whichever of those areas you want them to have the authority to operate in, or you can go down to the end of the list and initial the line that says designate all of the above. In most instances, I encourage you to initial all of the above. And I do that because if you become disabled and you have, let's say you have commodities and stocks, and you didn't initial that one, then your business is kind of in limbo, and it's going to be difficult for someone to necessarily take care of that for you. So you're better off, I believe, unless you are limiting this power of attorney for a specific item for a specific period of time, to designate all of those areas. I mention a specific item for a specific period of time because quite often that may be necessary. I'll give you an example. I needed to purchase a car, and I had made arrangements to purchase the car, but when it was available for delivery, I had to be out of town and was going to be doing a trial, and I just was not going to be able to get this car and get out of the rental car. So I designated a young man who worked in our office to have the authority to sign off on all of the documents and to collect the car for me. That was for a very specific item and for a specific period of time, and it was revoked after we completed that transaction. But for your long-term planning, I do strongly urge that you designate all of the areas. Now, one of the other things that the new change did, or the changes in 2018 did, was it gave you the power to limit your agent's authority. It specifically states whether the agent may make gifts to other people and whether the agent may make a gift to him or herself. And that's important because under the old form, the discretion in how to disperse your assets could be left entirely to the power of the person who held that power of attorney, and they could give themselves gifts, and some of them did. Unfortunately, you know, there are these horror stories about people who had the power of attorney when their relatives went to nursing care or nursing homes, who would just go in and transfer everything over to their names. And that was legal because that power of attorney was broad enough to allow that. Now, the power of attorney must be signed in the presence of a notary. The power of attorney, as I said earlier, can be revoked, but if it is not revoked, it does become void and ineffective at the time of your death. It should be filed with the Register of Deeds. It is not required by law that it be filed, but you will find that most financial institutions will give you a hard time, maybe not even recognize the document if it is not filed with the Register of Deeds. And by filing this document with the Register of Deeds, it actually becomes a public record. I personally was appointed as an agent for a person. I went to do banking on her behalf, and even though I had my own copy of the power of attorney, the banking officer went online and looked in the Register of Deeds office to be sure that that power of attorney was registered and that it had not been revoked. That's, I think, a good thing because there was a time when a lot of fraud was perpetuated on people, especially older people. So think long and hard about who you are going to designate as your power of attorney, but please do so, because if you become disabled or incompetent, you're not going to be able to sign the document. It's then too late. Many of us know people who suffer with some form of dementia or some, maybe even Alzheimer's. Once you get to the point where a doctor is saying that you cannot exercise judgment or you don't have the capacity to sign and enter into legal documents, it's too late to execute any of these documents. So it is incumbent upon us, all of us, including myself, to put these documents in order while we're in our sound minds. And that's true not only for the power of attorney, but it's true for all of the documents that you would execute: the healthcare power of attorney, the declaration for a natural death or a living will, and of course your last will and testament. So let's talk about the healthcare power of attorney. This document is so important. You know that under the federal and state laws, your health care and information about your health care, including what doctors you go to, what your condition is, what your medication is all protected by privacy laws. Many of you have heard of HIPAA. HIPAA prevents your health care providers, including even your pharmacist, from discussing matters involving your health care without your express consent. So the health care power of attorney allows you to have coverage and backup with your health care. That document gives other persons the authority to speak with your health care providers and to act on your behalf. It's a critical document. Now, this document is one which allows at any point in your life someone else to assist with your health care. You need not be incompetent. You need not be on death's door. All you need is to have the document signed. And think about this. If you had to undergo a procedure in a hospital or in an outpatient clinic where you are given medication for pain, for some while that medication may have you a little drowsy, not able to comprehend fully. So having the healthcare power of attorney executed allows a doctor to help you by talking to someone else. You know, even if you go for something as simple as a colonoscopy, they tell you that you've got to have somebody bring you in and you've got to have someone pick you up because they know that the effect of the drugs is going to inhibit your clear thinking. And so that healthcare power of attorney is important in instances like that. And of course, it's important if you were injured in an accident and you're in critical condition and there are some decisions about what needs to be done for your health care. You're not in a position to know. You might be knocked out. You might be on drugs to eliminate pain. So this is a very critical document, and I urge all of us to get one. Now, you can list up to 3 people, and I urge you to list up to 3 people who are not your health care providers, and you want on that form to put their names, their addresses, and most importantly, the phone numbers. And if there are work phone numbers, home numbers, that's great. But you know, we're all attached to a cell phone now, so the cell phone number is probably the most effective means of a doctor or a hospital getting in touch with them. You should give a copy of this document to all of your healthcare providers, and you should give it to the person who is designated on that form so that they know that they are designated. It's a good thing to talk to the people in advance so that there is agreement that they want to undertake that responsibility. I know, as I have been designated as someone's healthcare provider, that is and can be a lot of responsibility. I've been called in the late evening to get some guidance or to give some guidance to a hospital for the treatment of a woman whose healthcare power of attorney I hold. And until then, I never fully appreciated the scope of what that healthcare provider, that healthcare attorney document entailed. And so it is critical. You may end up having to make decisions about what kind of long-term care a person has, whether they have in-home care. All of that is a responsibility, so you want to be sure that the persons whose names you put on here have the willingness, have the ability, have the time and the willingness to do that. That document must be signed in the presence of a notary and a number of witnesses. That's how much the law views the sanctity and privacy of your health care information. For taking care of your business and, writing all the checks out of your checking accounts and what have you, you only need to sign that document in the presence of a notary. But for this health care power of attorney, it must be 3 witnesses and the notary. Now, let's talk about this last will and testament. It is a document, very much what it says. Last will and testament. You need to be over the age of 18. You need to be in sound mind and body. And this document, as you know, allows you to direct who gets what of your assets upon your death. It doesn't distribute anything before your death. It's only after your death. So keep in mind, you have a power of attorney that is effective up until the moment of your death, and that person or persons will help take care of your assets and your business affairs until you die. But once you die, that power of attorney loses all effectiveness, and then the will controls. Now, the will controls, but it may take a little while before you're able to put everything in order and designate have the designated executor get letters from the clerk of court's office. But let's talk now about what you can do with that will. I like to divide the assets according to whether it's real property or personal property. Now, your real property is the land that you may own and any houses. That's the real property. Is it attached to the ground? Personal property, on the other hand, is everything else. It's your vehicles, your bank accounts, any jewelry, money, any business interest that you might have. That's your personal property. The will allows you to designate a beneficiary, and I also strongly urge you to designate an alternate beneficiary, because none of us know when we're going or when anybody else is going to leave this world. So the persons who you think you want to get your assets may leave here before you do, in which case you want an alternate to be named. Some people are very detailed with their wills. I urge people to think about how they want their assets to be distributed. Sometimes people have family discussions and they talk about it with their children and their loved ones beforehand, and that's fine because it gives them some clarity on what you want and what you intend to do. But that being said, the final decision on what happens with your assets is yours. It's not your children's, it's not your spouse's, your sister's, or your mother or your father's. It's yours. That's what the law is going to recognize. In distributing assets, most of us think about the things that have financial value first. You know, the land, the cars, the houses, jewelry, what have you. I urge all of my clients to think also about what I call legacy items or family heirlooms. Our cultural identity is important, and the best place for that to be passed on is through our family. We celebrate Black History Month in February, but I want us to understand that Black history is in all of our families. We may not have been the first to go to the moon or anything that somebody wants to write about, but it's important for members of our families to see those old deeds that shows when somebody first acquired some property. It's important for our children to see even the check stubs from their grandparents or their great-great-grandparents. And it's important for us to hold on to those things that can be passed down from generation to generation to establish our family relations and our family ties. And it's also good to have those tangible things, you know, the quilts that Grandma made, the iron skillets, the wash pots, or the, what do they call it, the black kettle pots that you had the fish fries in. All of those things keep us connected from one generation to the next. And I take time and encourage people to figure out who in the family is the best person to handle it. There's always somebody in the family who's going to take an interest, and then there are some people who just, nah, it doesn't matter, they would just assume, throw away everything. But find that person. It may not be your child, it may not be your spouse, it may be a cousin or an aunt, but make sure it ends up in the right hands. Now, one of the most important things that you will do in your will is designate the executor. That is the person who, after you die, is going to be responsible for handling all of your affairs, winding them down, and distributing your assets. It's very important that you also designate an alternate executor. And the reason that you want to designate this alternate executor is because your executor, or the person you designate as the executor, may become disabled or may pass on before you do. Now, the will is one of the final documents that will handle the distribution of your assets. But keep in mind that there are some ways to distribute your assets outside of the will. And I'm going to talk to you about a few ways that you can do that. Number one, if you have life insurance policies, you should designate by name the persons who you want to get those benefits. If you designate your estate as the beneficiary on the life insurance policy, that falls through, that policy then has to be, the proceeds rather from that policy have to be put in your estate account. And depending on how much that policy is, it could increase the fees that you have to pay to the clerk of court. So if you have life insurance, my advice is to designate the beneficiary, especially if you are designating, you have a spouse or children. If you designate them on the life insurance policy, upon presentation of the death certificate and maybe a medallion signature, depending on how much the policy is, they get that money immediately. If it has to go through your estate, that process could be delayed. Some of you have retirement and pension plans or 401k plans. All of those allow you to designate a beneficiary. I strongly urge you to designate the beneficiaries and keep that up to date. If one of your designated beneficiaries should become disabled, or if they pass on before you, you may want to change that depending on what their needs may be. You know that if someone ends up in a nursing home, they may not want to have a lot of assets in their name if they are not able to afford nursing home care, and most people will not be able to afford nursing home care. It is ungodly expensive. But Medicaid will pay for nursing home care if a disabled person is unable to foot that bill. It will require that all of the assets that this person owns be spent down currently to $2,000. But it could be more in the future. And if there is any real property still in that person's name, once they enter into the nursing home and need Medicaid services, Medicaid will take a lien on any of that real property. Now, to avoid that, you may transfer the property from the person's name to whoever name. You may sell it. And if you're going to try to keep it in the family, I urge you to at least sell it at the tax value. That could be viewed as fair value. But if not, that lien will have to be satisfied after the person has passed on. If the transfer of that property occurs more than 5 years before the person needs the Medicare services, Medicare will not do what they call a look back. But if you see that somebody needs to go to the nursing home in a year or so, and then you transfer the property, well, it's subject to a look back, and you may defeat that purpose. If you have mutual funds, many of those funds allow you to also designate a beneficiary, and I urge you to do so. Now, most people, when they are married and buy a house together, it is bought as what we call tenancy by the entirety, so that the property automatically passes to the surviving spouse upon the death of one of them. You may own property in what we call a joint tenancy with the right of survivorship. Let me say that again. Joint tenancy with the right of survivorship can be applied to real property, to bank accounts, and can be true on your businesses. What that means is that when one person dies, the other person or persons, you can designate more than one person as a joint tenant with the right of survivorship, automatically gets that property. It doesn't go through your estate. The beauty of that is that, again, it's automatic. If you have an account, a bank account, and you already have somebody's name on it as a joint tenant with the right of survivorship, the money automatically goes to them. It's immediately at their disposal and can be of great assistance as they are winding down your affairs and continuing to go on without you. The most important thing that you must do in order to achieve that with respect to your bank account is you must specifically say to the bank that you want this account to be a joint tenancy with the right of survivorship. You can have somebody on your bank account as a joint owner of the bank account, but if it is not joint with the right of survivorship, they're not entitled necessarily to all of the money. There is one caveat. You do need to be careful about anybody who you put on your account as a joint owner of the account, because that does give them the right to handle the account in any way that you could. They can make deposits, which is good, but they can also make withdrawals. And if you aren't comfortable that the person who you are thinking about is going to handle that account properly, think again, get somebody else. You may also, on your bank accounts and on other financial accounts, designate someone or designate the account as payable on death to someone. This allows you to have full control of your bank account while you are alive, but immediately upon your death, with the presentation of a death certificate, that account is payable to the person you designate. And that is a benefit as well to people who survive you if you want your accounts to be used to their benefit. Quite often, people don't have these protections put in place, and their spouses or children need to get access to their funds to take care of ongoing expenses that you might want done. For instance, if you've got a mortgage on the house that you're living in, and that mortgage is partly paid out of your checking account, you don't want the mortgage to go into foreclosure because your relatives who survive you are not able to keep up that mortgage payment without your assets. So there are benefits to do that, and I urge you to discuss that in detail with the lawyers that represent you, or if you just know clearly what you want to do. If your bank account is in your name only, go down and put it in, put either as a joint with the right of survivorship or payable on death. Now, if you use the joint with the right of survivorship and you become disabled, that person is able to use your account to help pay for whatever your needs are. But if you only designate it as payable on death, they really don't have access to those funds until you die. So just think about what your needs might be and choose accordingly. Again, those documents, the power of attorney, the healthcare power of attorney, and the will are documents which you must be competent, and when I say competent, you must know who you are, who your relatives are, what your assets are. And you don't have to list them all out, but you need to know that you've got a bank account at Mechanics and Farmers or wherever, and you need to be able to satisfy the notary or the witnesses that you are of sound mind, because if you are not, then the document is subject to challenge. It's my pleasure to be here with you, and I am, like the other panelists, available to have discussions and answer questions. So thank you for your time.
Thank you, ladies, for that valuable information. It definitely will help us all. Now, panel number 2. The topics for this panel include long-term care, hospice or palliative care, chaplain services, and Medicare. And our presenters are Brother Kelvin Darden, Sister Amy Curtis, Reverend Astra Aker, and Deaconess Shauna Barnes. Let us begin with panel number 2.
Good morning. Thank you for having me. My name is Kelvin Darden. I am a regional nurse for Peak Resources. I'm here today representing the long-term care industry for healthcare. I just wanted to give you this morning just a couple of interesting facts that you probably should know in regards to long-term care. When we think about long-term care, first we want to understand that there are different portions of long-term care. Most times when we just think that there's one particular area, but we have to make sure that you understand that there are nursing homes, which are called skilled nursing facilities, assisted living facilities, and then there are independent senior communities as well. The differences in those three, we'll first start with assisted living communities. Those most times are for people who do not need the care of a nurse 24 hours a day. You may have a nurse that is on call, but the facility mostly is staffed with CNAs and med aides who are providing care, mostly personal care and medication administration, things of that nature. But there may not be a nurse on site 24 hours a day. There may be a nurse that is on call that you can get access to that nurse, but that nurse is not required to be at the facility 24 hours a day at an assisted living. Independent living is simply that. It's more so like your senior apartments, things of that nature that you probably would have at the most a pull cord or something in the facility that would alert that there is an emergency needed. For skilled nursing facilities, that is where we commonly most think of those as nursing homes. We've gotten really fancy these days where You hear some people referring to them as rehab centers and things of that nature. But at the end of the day, a skilled nursing facility, no matter what you call it, is still, if you call it a nursing home, rehab facility, it's all licensed the same. Those do have a nurse 24 hours a day. It's considered a nursing home because it is staffed with nurses and CNAs who provide care for your more complex care residents. It's kind of a step down from not a hospital type setting. We are able to do some of the things that a hospital setting is able to do, like IVs and things of that nature. But it is, again, as I stated, staffed 24 hours a day with a nurse. Just wanted to make you aware in regards to that. That's where I'm going to spend the bulk of my time talking today, because I think that most people do not fully prepare themselves when it comes to having to choose to make a decision to enter what we, would, if a case manager would call it a rehab facility or a nursing home. Oftentimes, we are led to those moments by some acute episode happening, right? A fall. You happen to have an unexpected surgery, or something unexpected that leaves your parent or older family member. And not even these days, not even older family members. There are some younger people as well who happen to end up needing the services of a skilled nursing facility. But these moments often are not planned. So, I think I want to thank the Park Church for having these type of settings so that people are aware in regards to making these decisions, because as I stated, oftentimes you rarely have any leading time up to making that decision of having to choose one to either enter into a rehab facility or something like that, because again, as I stated, it is some unexpected event most times that leads most of our residents to needing the skilled nursing facility. So what generally happens is you end up at the hospital, and then from there you're not ready to go home, but the hospital is not able to keep you, and so they bring you a list of nursing homes in the area, and 9 times out of 10, there are a couple of them that are highlighted, and those are the ones that are offering a bed based off of your care, because your information has been sent out to those particular nursing homes. What you will find is that nursing homes are just like hotels, right? We're graded. We're graded on several different measures. One will be a health inspection. There's a 1 to 5 star rating for health inspection, and that is just over the last 3 years, of health inspections by the state, 1 being the lowest, and then 5, of course, being the highest. And then we are also graded on quality measures. Those are the particular residents that we house in our facilities, that several measures that, if you have a high infections and high wound care, and some of those are because you've admitted those residents, and some of those are because they have been acquired within the facility. Those are the quality measures, and those are also listed in the Nursing Home Compare website, where you would go to find the star ratings for skilled nursing facilities. And then we are also graded on staffing, from a 1 to a 5 again being the best. And so all of those 3 areas then are combined to what is given an overall rating for a nursing home. And that can be either 1 star, which is below average, as well as up to a 5 star, which is above average. So when you are having to make a decision in regards to having to choose which particular nursing home that if your family member or even yourself would be going to, of course, everybody is going to lean towards the 5-star facilities. There are several 5-star facilities right here in the Mecklenburg County area, and surrounding counties as well as there are several 1-star facilities as well, and then there are several that vary in between there as well. What I will say in regards to that is that not all five-star facilities provide the best care. Let's just be realistic about it. And then not all one-star facilities provide the worst care either. What I would say in regards to that, it is a combination of a different, like I said, the inspection, the staffing, and the quality measures that all combine into one. And being that we have all been affected by COVID, and thank God that hopefully we are moving towards being on the other side of that, there was a pause for about 2 years in regards to state inspections that nursing homes, which is used to be the second highest regulated area in the United States, second to nuclear weapons, but now has become the most regulated area in the United States. We have seen over the last 2 years, because of the pause in inspections by the state, that they have come down really hard on nursing homes when it comes to the inspections, that things that, handing out some of the harshest penalties when it comes to some of the slightest little things that can skew the five-star ratings for a nursing home. And so what I would say in regards to making the choice for a nursing home is that, one, you visit that nursing home. If you have the opportunity that a family member is making that decision for a family member, is to go and to visit the nursing home. Just want to just kind of talk about some realistic expectations when you would visit a nursing home. One, you will not always receive a private room. Let's just be real about it, right? Because most nursing homes don't all have private rooms, and so you may end up having to share a room. It's all based off of your benefits, and I'm going to talk about that in just a few minutes as well. Oftentimes we will say that, it's not going to be absent of smells, but you want to understand the difference of what smell is a lingering smell and what smell is just a smell that may just be for that particular moment. Just being real about it, right? If you were to go into any of our homes at any time of the day, right? We all have to have our moments, right? And so when you enter into a nursing home, you realize that these are these residents' homes. And so, after eating, oftentimes there may be a smell that may not be a pleasant smell, but, those are normally not lingering smells. And what I would say in visiting a nursing home, normally if you do smell urine, that is normally not a good indication that you want to choose that nursing home for your family member, because that would be an indication that that urine has dried. But if it's a poop smell, of course, let's, be real about it, right? We all have to have our moments. And so those normally are smells that don't last. But if it is a strong smell of urine, I would say that is probably not a place that you would want to choose for your family member. You want to be considerate of the food. Of course, this is not going to be grandma's cooking at a nursing home, right? Because we have to prepare meals that for all type of health conditions, where it be someone who has high blood pressure, someone who might be on dialysis, someone that might be a diabetic, things of that nature. And so the seasoning for foods in a nursing home are going to be similar to what you would receive in a hospital as well. It's probably not going to be greens with ham hocks and things of that nature. So you're not going to be, most people, especially if you're a great cook, you're not going to be that thrilled about having to eat nursing home food. Let's just be real about it, right? And then just making sure that, sometimes that you will say that for your family member of having to be admitted to a nursing home, will they adjust? I've seen some families have more of a hard time for that their family member adjusting being in the nursing home than the family member being in the nursing home, because oftentimes you think of some of our parents that, they're older and things of that nature, and they're not as active as they were in younger days, and may not be as social as they have been in their younger years. And so now you may bring them to the nursing home, and then they end up at bingo and end up in all of these group activities, where at home they may not have had the opportunity to be around similar age people, and so don't always assume that they may not adjust well to being in a nursing home because, again, as I, over the last 25 years of working in long-term care, I've seen some of the people who just think that, mama's not going to do well here, and then mama gets there and blossoms and becomes this person that nobody has seen in the last 20 years because they've not been social and not be able to be around, peers, things of that nature. So you just want to just make sure that you don't overreact, not thinking that your loved one will not adjust well to be in a nursing home. At the end of the day, we all know that that is probably not a choice that anybody wants to make for a loved one. But then on the opposite end of that, I will say this, there are some family members who are attempting to try to take care of family members at home. Well, the nursing home is probably a better option, and care would be better provided at the nursing home. I always say to family members that no one will care for your family like you do, right? Because that's your family. But on the opposite side of that, I can say that, there have been some residents that, as I have, become close to working in nursing home for, several years and things of that nature, that you become just like family members to these residents as well. And so, there have been someone that I have grieved just as hard as some of the family members because I had the opportunity to become very close to those residents in the nursing home. So there are a lot of caring staff members in nursing homes. I do say that it is a ministry. It's not something, it's kind of like teaching, right? It's a calling. You have to be called to that because not everyone is able to do it. So I do want to just make sure that when you are having to make these choices, some of the things, as I stated earlier, that you don't always have the opportunity to have a lot of time to make that choice before having to make the choice. So what I would say is that you want to understand your benefits, right? What are the payers that pay for a family member to be in a nursing home? Well, of course, if you have money in the bank, we're never going to turn down or turn away someone who is able to privately pay for their family member to be there. Most of us, we don't fit in that category, right? And so you look at federal funding, right? Those who qualify for Medicaid, those who qualify if you are Medicare age, and then there are Medicare Advantage plans as well that do service funding for your family member to be in the nursing home. For the private pay, most of the nursing homes here in the Mecklenburg County area, the semi-private room rate is somewhere between, I would say, $250 to about $300 a day. That does not even include the pharmacy bills that may be associated and any other care needs that may come along with your family member being in the nursing home. For someone who may qualify for Medicaid, your Medicaid normally does pay the bulk of what it costs to stay in a nursing home. What most people, when you qualify for Medicaid, the Medicaid caseworker will let you know what your patient monthly liability is. That could be from $0 all the way up to, it's normally your income minus $30. So let's just say, for instance, if you have a Social Security check of $1,000, what if your patient monthly liability on average would probably be somewhere around $970 a month that you will owe to the nursing home, and Medicaid will pay the remaining funding for that resident to be in the nursing home. Most times, family members will say that they can't afford to do that, right? Or that they have other obligations when it comes to the finances and things of that nature. But one of the things that most people don't understand is that when you admit a family member to the nursing home, that becomes their home, right? And so money follows the person. And so if you're trying to keep an apartment and things of that nature, that would be on your own expense, because 9 times out of 10, unless there is a spouse involved, Medicaid is going to say that the full amount of that income minus $30 is what you're going to owe to the nursing home. Medicare, when you talk about Medicare, Medicare does pay for day number 1 through 20 at 100%. The most misconception when it comes to Medicare is thinking that you are guaranteed 100 days to be in a nursing home. That is guaranteed up to 100 days to be in a nursing home, provided that you have a continued skilled need to remain in a nursing home. So most people, they will come to the nursing home saying, oh, I have 100 days. Well, you have up to 100 days. That is not saying that you will receive Medicaid funding for, Medicare funding for the entire 100 days, especially if you don't need it. Of course, at the end of the day, the nursing home is the case manager for Medicare, and so it's our responsibility to ensure that we are not fraudulently billing anything and keeping you there longer than you need to be. So in the event that after 3 weeks we see that you have met your goals, then we are going to give you a 48-hour notice of an intent to discharge to allow you time to work towards getting back home. Of course, 9 times out of 10, you've known that leading up to that moment, because there have been care conferences that have discussed with you where you are during your progress, during your stay at the facility. So you would know, prior to that 48-hour notice that you were leaning somewhere towards discharging from the facility for Medicare. For a Medicare Advantage, those plans, most common, you probably are familiar with Humana, United Healthcare, Blue Cross, Blue Shield, Aetna. Those, we are managed, they're managed by case managers who are employees of the insurance company. And so you actually do not get to come to a nursing home without an authorization from that long-term care insurance, the Medicare Advantage insurance plan that grants you authorization for your stay at the nursing home. Not every surgery and not every instance that you enter into the hospital will they grant you the opportunity to come to a nursing home. It is all based off of your needs, which will determine whether or not that you are able to be authorized for a stay at the nursing home. Once you are authorized for that stay, we at the nursing home we have to provide updates. It's generally weekly on your progress, and that makes the determination on the insurance determining whether or not you get to continue to remain in the facility, or if you will get that 48-hour notice of intent to discharge to return back home. So I will say make sure that you understand your benefits, because most common, the thing that I see the most in dealing with family members is they don't understand what their benefits will offer for them, right? You've not thought about that because you have not thought that you would happen to need to go into a nursing home. And again, like I said, that most times is a last-minute decision based off of an emergency that occurred that led you to the hospital that now is making you have to make that decision to come to the nursing home. And so I will say now, while you are able and don't need the services of a nursing home, find out exactly what you're paying for, right? What is covered in your benefits? What are your options? If you never need to utilize those options, and that's all well and good. But in the event that you do have to use those options and utilize those benefits, it is to your best benefit that you understand what your insurance is going to pay for, how long it's going to pay for you to stay there. If you're going to qualify for Medicaid, if you have Medicaid in the community, will you qualify for Medicaid in long-term care? Because there's a difference between community Medicaid and long-term Medicaid as well. In just preparing for long-term care, I would say at the end of the day, we know two things. One, every day we're getting older, and two, we don't know what will ever happen in our lives. So it is our best interest that, that as we prepare to get older and things of that nature, if you have aging parents and things of that nature, then you sit down and have those conversations with your parents so that you can find out who their benefits are with. I can say for myself, don't just assume that you know. Recently, just not long ago, I had that conversation with my mom, and I was under the impression that she is a Medicare age recipient, and so I was thinking that, okay, well, she's just a Medicare recipient, and then sit down to talk to her, and of course, there are representatives everywhere in Walmart, and there are grocery stores and Sam's and things of that nature, and she had made a decision to choose United Healthcare as her Medicare Advantage plan to replace her Medicare benefits. And so had I not had those conversations with her, I would have not known that information until probably it got to a moment that, she needed to go into the hospital or something like that, and I didn't know and wouldn't have known until that time. So I encourage you to have those conversations with your parents, to talk about what the benefits that they have. So in the event that you do have to make the decision for long-term care, that you do understand what their benefits are and what you may have out of pocket costs when it comes to that as well. And just one of the things I did want to say for Medicare, again, like I stated, Medicare for day, if you have a traditional Medicare A without United Healthcare, Humana, or Blue Cross, one of those plans, day 0 through 20 is covered. At day 21, there is now an out-of-pocket copay, and every year the government does raise that copay amount up, and it's per day. So that's out-of-pocket cost. Generally, it is 80% that is covered by Medicare, and the 20%, which for 2023, the government says is $200 a day out of pocket, which is considered to be your co-insurance. For your Medicare Advantage plan, I would encourage you to find out what your co-insurance would be per day for a skilled nursing facility. In all, I say, again, just wrapping this up, that most times, as I started this conversation out, it is not something that most people plan to end up in long-term care. But I will say in workshops like this, it is good to take that moment and to just pause and think, if you were to happen to end up there, how will you pay for it? What would that look like for you? What does your benefits cover for you? And again, I want to thank the Park Church for having me back again this year to discuss the options in regards to long-term care. And thank the Park Church for having workshops such as these that will inform you of your options when it comes to having to prepare to make a decision for long-term care. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you for inviting me to come here today to talk about hospice and palliative care. My name is Amy Curtis, and I'm a strategic account manager with Hospice and Palliative Care Charlotte Region. We are a nonprofit independent hospice that only does hospice and palliative care. So I'm here today to give a little introduction about the services that we provide and hopefully alleviate some myths or concerns when people talk about hospice and what that really means. For those of you unfamiliar with palliative care, that is when you have a chronic condition, something that is non-curable. For example, if you're diagnosed with Alzheimer's disease or Parkinson's, congestive heart failure, or trouble with your pulmonary, like COPD. These conditions can be very overwhelming, and going to a specialist or a general practitioner can often leave you having more questions than answers. Palliative care works with you and your family, your loved ones, to talk about your goals of care. and to anticipate things that you might not be aware of as your disease progresses. So it's for anyone to partner with your general practitioner or your regular physician to talk about, what does this medication mean when other symptoms and other situations arise? What are your hopes? What are your wishes? Do you want to continue going to the hospital? Do you want to continue with certain medications? And then also talking about goals of care. What is your priority for you and your family? So if your doctor or someone mentions having a consultation with palliative care, don't be overwhelmed. It's an opportunity to have your questions answered. Talk to them about your concerns, especially with a new diagnosis. Sometimes we hear certain conditions and we know of a family member or a friend that went through a similar journey, and it can be very scary, all the unknowns of what this will mean for you. For us at Hospice and Palliative Care Charlotte Region, we want to partner with you on your journey to help alleviate some of those overwhelming concerns and really to sit with you, listen, and hear about what's going on. For palliative care, you can do one appointment, just like you would visit a specialist, and you would sit down with one of our nurses and our nurse practitioner. It's a service that's covered through Medicare Part B, and it would just be like the cost of going to an office visit for a regular physician. So you would talk with our team of care staff, the nurses, about what your concerns are and what your hopes are, and we would help create a care plan for you. You can call us if you have any concerns, and if you happen to go out to the hospital, we would follow you there and meet you and say, okay, we see you've had a situation arise, we can help walk you through all the different choices you might have to face. So it's nice to have a partner on your journey that can even help alleviate sometimes complicated family situations. If you're responsible or a guardian of someone and there might be 3 or 4 other people that are involved in care and you might all have a disagreement about what's the right next step. Palliative can help be that mediator and talk through what all those different choices would mean. So we're not here to tell you what to do, but to sort of guide you on that journey. So palliative, by definition, means comfort care, and that is an adjective that's used to describe hospice. So the word hospice, I think, once people hear that, we have this notion of, oh, that means I'm going to die very soon. Well, in some cases that might be, but for others, we have folks that are on service for months and months, often, even reevaluating care after a year's time. But hospice is supposed to support you in your journey when the life expectancy is 6 months or less. So this could mean that it's an adult failure to thrive situation where your loved one is, late in their 90s and just the body is tired. We can get glasses and we can dye our hair, get rid of some of that gray, but sometimes things just happen as you go along in your journey. So with hospice, we would meet with you similar to palliative, and we would assign a care staff specifically to you. So that would mean a nurse, a CNA, a certified nursing assistant, a chaplain, should you wish. And this isn't any specific religion, it's more of a spiritual journey, and we could partner with other chaplains in that. So just to make that clear, that it's not a specific religion. And then we have volunteers that can come out, sometimes just, sit with you, read a story, read, verses from the Bible, hold your hand so you're not alone. These are all things that we offer. We also have physicians on our staff that would come to you where you're at. So let's say you're still able to live at home, but getting out to the doctor has become much more challenging. Who wants to wait in the waiting room for 20 minutes to then be seen by a doctor for 2 minutes and then, sit in traffic for all those times? So our physicians can come to you wherever you consider home. And we would The hospice benefit is covered by Part A, so we would take on that cost of anything related to the admitting diagnosis. So all of the medications, all of the durable medical equipment, for example, if you needed a hospital bed or a bedside commode, a chair rail, anything that's related to the diagnosis, we're there for you. One thing to keep in mind too is sometimes when people are given more attention, they do better. You're having someone come to your house every day. We don't stay 24 hours, we don't move in with you, but we do visit often, and we make it convenient for you and your family for when we do arrive. But sometimes, patients do much better giving all that attention, and you do discharge alive. So just because someone suggests getting a hospice evaluation, sometimes either you're medically not appropriate yet, or maybe just spiritually not there yet, and that's okay. Having someone come out to talk with you, visit, talk about your goals of care, introduce our services to you, how often we would come, what we're able to do. For example, helping get dressed, get bathed, eat even. We can help with all of those services in addition to the registered nurse visiting. But you can have someone come out to do a hospice evaluation and hear everything that we have to say, and then at that time say, you know what, I'm not ready today, but thank you. So I think sometimes people have the misunderstanding that, once that's said, that it's, that's the end-all, be-all, but it's not. We partner with you on your journey and keep all of your wishes intact. One misnomer, too, that people say, oh, if I go under hospice care, I have to be a do not resuscitate or a DNR. That's actually not true. We do talk with folks about their goals of care, but if you wish to still be resuscitated, we would honor that. Also, there's a lot of myths out there about the drugs that hospice uses, specifically morphine. One of the reasons that we use morphine is that you could start it at a very low dose, and then, we can, it's called titrate it. We can increase the amounts as, your pain level increases. Often people associate morphine with hospice and that would bring on death. Well, the reality is that statistically people live longer. And that is because they're comfortable, and also one of the side effects, all those commercials that we see on TV that list all the different side effects, one of the side effects of morphine is it actually opens up the bronchs in the lungs, so you breathe easier. There's a lot of other, myths out there about hospice, but I just want to say, we're here for you 24 hours a day, 365. We have, with Hospice and Palliative Care Charlotte Region, I explained we have that team of the interdisciplinary group that's assigned to you, so you create that relationship with the nurse, and the CNA knows what your preferences are. But we also staff for after hours, which means that your team assigned to you between 8 and 5, they go home, they rest, and then there's an after hours team that their sole job is to help with emergencies. We all know that you can't plan for something at 2 o'clock in the morning, but that's usually when things occur. So you have a fresh set of people that sort of act as like a triage, or your alternative to going back to the hospital. And then we also have a team on call over the weekends. So one of the things that makes us different as a hospice organization is that, I said earlier, all we do is hospice and palliative care, and our staff is specially trained. It's called a CHIP-IN certification, but certified in hospice, and we staff well. So other hospices, and that's something to consider, there are your choice in providers, and so making that calculated decision about who you want to provide your care for, you need to ask, how they do staffing, what's included with the medications, how often would I be able to have a nurse come. Be your own advocate, and I can assure you, if you're watching this program, you already are on board with being an advocate for yourself and your healthcare choices. So I commend you for watching, and I thank the park for their time in doing this. I believe they said it's 19 years now, so what a great service that they've done. But again, my name is Amy Curtis, and I'm with Hospice and Palliative Care Charlotte Region, and we cover 23 counties in Charlotte and then into South Carolina. If you have any questions, I'm happy to be a resource for you. Thank you.
You quick, Stephen. You ready, boy. Good job, Amy. It looks good. What's up? I'm Astra Aker. I'm a chaplain at Carolinas Medical Center, Charlotte, downtown. I'm a chaplain in the emergency room, but I have also been a chaplain in all areas of the hospital as well. And what a chaplain does is we basically are part of the treatment team where we care for the spiritual aspects of a person when they're in the hospital. There are various different types of chaplains. There are hospital chaplains, corporate chaplains, sports chaplains, police chaplains. So there are chaplains all over the place, but I am a hospital chaplain. So when you're in the hospital, I can come alongside you to help support you in your beliefs, in your traditions that you normally participate in. I think as Amy talked about, we are not specific religion. We are ecumenical chaplains at CMC, where I can come alongside you and help you no matter what your beliefs are. What that means is I can maybe call the parish for you to get a priest to come if you want a priest to come. I can get you a rosary. I can contact the temple to make sure that you get whatever traditions or rituals that you need to help you in your care. But I can most definitely pray with you. I can be there for you before you have a surgery or while you're going through different processes, maybe palliative care or hospice care, to deal with the fears and different things that you have pertaining to that. I'm also an advocate for the patients that are in the hospital to make sure that they get the best care as possible, to make sure that the things that they value, the things that you really need to make sure that you can be on a good road of recovery are present and possible for you, to be there to create a safe space for you, to be able to talk about those fears, to be able to go through treatment protocols to make sure that you pick what the best protocol is for you. I'm also a stand-in for clergy and family members that are not able to be there for you right now, especially during COVID. It's been really difficult for us to have visitation in the hospitals, and so a chaplain can be there to be with that person so that they're not alone in the hospital. As I said, I'm in the emergency department, and so sometimes when you're in the emergency department, you're very scared as far as what is going on. And so I'm there to provide that calm presence for you, to be able to be there if you want to talk with someone or just to be that extension of your clergy or your family. I'm also there to assist family when a loved one dies. So a chaplain is there to be able to take you to see your loved one after they have died. Also to be able to help you understand what those next steps are, contacting the funeral home and getting the services provided. So we are there to do that. But most of all, we are a ministry of presence. You would be surprised to understand just how having someone there walking alongside you as you go through whatever it is that you go through, how that makes a difference. There are statistics that show that people that have faith, people that are able to have their spiritual aspects of themselves catered to or allowed to come out, that they fare better in the hospital than they do if they don't have those things. One of the things that we do at CMC is that we also assist in advance directives. We work with the palliative care team to make sure that a person has those advance directives that they need, which are healthcare power of attorney, living will. We also have notaries that can notarize those documents for you free of charge. So if you're in the hospital or your family member is in the hospital and you want to complete those advance directives, all you have to do is ask to complete those advance directives, and the chaplain will come to help you make sure you understand what those advance directives entail, and we'll get those notarized for you. So we work very closely with palliative care and the care team to make sure that everybody is treated holistically in the hospital, that it's not just your physical, it's not just your mental, but it's also your spiritual. I'm also here today to talk about care for the caregiver. Being a caregiver is it's a unique situation. It's very difficult sometimes. And one of the main things that you have to remember is being able to take care of yourself while you are a caregiver. It is very important that you take care of yourself during times of stress. As a chaplain, many times in the hospital, I have to remind family members to take care of themselves. Have you eaten today? If they haven't eaten, I go to the cafeteria for them. I may bring them something to eat, whatever those things may be, but make sure that you care for yourself while you're caring for someone else. Because you can't pour from an empty cup. We've all heard that adage, and you cannot give out what you do not allow yourself to take in yourself. So in order to be able to be effective as a caregiver, you have to be able to take care of your own needs so that you're able to take care of other people's needs. So self-care is not selfish. I'll say that again. Self-care is not selfish. Self-care is self-love. It's loving yourself enough so that you take care of yourself, and it's also loving your loved one enough that you give them the best version of you that they can receive. Caring for a loved one is not easy. When you become a caregiver, if someone has a long-term illness or is at an end-of-life situation, it's not easy. You begin to see changes in that loved one. Your roles may shift from from being a child to now you're that healthcare power of attorney, making those decisions that pertain to that person's health. You're taking on new roles. You might have to be that business person for them to go and conduct their business. So your roles change. Sometimes you become the parent, and you have to help them along. There's an interruption in your regularly scheduled program, if you will. The things that are regularly scheduled and the things that you would normally do get interrupted. You may have someone that comes to live with you, or you may have to go live with someone else. That interrupts your household, that interrupts your routine, that interrupts all the things that are going on. You may have to change locations. You may have to travel. All of those different things you have to take into consideration. You have to be aware of the stress and how you deal with stress, what things that you exhibit when you are stressed. So it could be feeling overwhelmed. It could just be feeling overly tired. You may have sleep disturbances. You may have lack of concentration. You may have increased irritability. And right now during COVID, we have a lot of social isolation. So you may be by yourself, and as a caregiver, it can be isolating because you're not able to do and go do the things that you would normally be able to do. So you have to be able to make sure that during those times you're able to care for yourself so that you can be the best version of you possible. My experience with caregiving, my mother was diagnosed with lung cancer and stomach cancer in July of 2018. And by October 2018, she was in hospice care, and she was in hospice for 7 months. So just like Amy said, sometimes it's not, right away or anything like that. It can actually be long term. But entering into hospice, that was a very quick jump. She got a little sick, and then it was just like, oh, you have lung cancer, and now it's like, this is what's happening. So it can be very fast. It can be a quick turn of events. Your role as a healthcare provider or healthcare power of attorney or a caregiver can go from A to to Z very, very fast. Things that you'll have to take care of, decisions that you'll have to make, the whole plan that you'll have to have in place. I lived in a different city than my mother, so I had to drive an hour and 20 minutes every week, every few days, to be able to take her to doctor's appointments and different things like that. Being able to understand what services your employer has so that you can be able to maintain the things that you need to do, maintain your employment. So FMLA, understanding what that entails, understanding what your leave process is. While I was caring for my mother, I was able to do intermittent FMLA, which a lot of people think when they think of FMLA, they think of the continuous FMLA where you have to be off work for a long period of time. But I was able to do intermittent FMLA. So I was able to leave work and go take her to a doctor's appointment or come into work later, have a modified schedule so I could do the things that I needed to do with her, but also have my job. So you have to be able to understand what those situations are so that you can best be there for your loved one. You have to make sure that you have an outlet. Who is there that you can talk to? Is it a support group? Is it a therapist? Who do you have available to be able to mull over your fears and your anxieties and the things that you have questions about? Being able to be fully informed about all the things that are going on. What exactly does hospice do, in your area? If your person needs a caregiver 24/7, is that something that they can do, or do you have to look into outside sources? All of those things are very important when you're trying to take care of someone. One of the hardest things for me as a caregiver was having balance, making sure that as I was caring for my mother, that I was also being able to care for myself, so that I could be there for my family and my children and those types of things. Because if you give everything that you have to one person, then you'll neglect yourself, you'll neglect something else. So being able to have that balance, being able to continue the rituals that I did, continue to maintain your routine as much as you can do. Make sure that you're caring for yourself in all aspects, emotionally, spiritually, physically, making sure you go to your own doctor's appointments, making sure that you do what it is that you can do to make sure that you stay grounded, that you stay centered, that you can have your cup full so that when you go or when you are there to care for someone else, that you can give them everything that they need. One of the ways to care for yourself that people don't think about is having those hard conversations. Healthcare power of attorney, what is it that you want, or what is it that your loved one wants at the end of their life, or if they're not able to make those decisions for themselves. So being able to have those hard conversations, being able to ask all the questions that you need to ask. And it's very great to have these workshops like this, because you're able to have these conversations, you're able to get all the information and have all these conversations when you're not under duress, when you're not having to make those decisions in a pressed period of time. So being able to have the hard discussions, to be able to know what that person wants, what it is that they don't want, and along with that, what it is that they want, where do they want to be? Do they want to be at home? Do they want to be in the hospice center? Do they want to be in the hospital? What funeral homes do they want? What kind of funeral do they want? All of those things pertain to that end-of-life care and estate planning and all of those different types of situations. So being able to have those hard conversations so that when the time comes, you are well prepared and you're able to do what that person would want to do, or you would have someone be able to do what you would want to do, so that takes the stress off of them in that time, because all they have to do is just enact what it is that you have already put in place. One of the things that goes along with that as well that many people don't discuss and talk about, and one of the things that we as chaplains can help you with in the hospital, is the end-of-life plan, which sometimes is called a death plan, but we like to call it the end-of-life plan. Is what is it that you want if you have the opportunity to plan dying well? What does that look like? What does the atmosphere look like? Do you want medications? Do you not want medications? What types of things do you want to hear and see in the room? What type of people do you want in the room? What do you want the atmosphere to be like? Those are things that are good discussions to have, and even though we don't like to have those discussions, they make us very uncomfortable. You want yourself to be able to die well if you have that opportunity, and you want your loved one to be able to die well. So being able to have that plan in place. We have birth plans. You know, when we get pregnant, we have those birth plans. You know, I want music, I want aromatherapy, I want a doula, I want to be in the tub, I want to be in the hot, all those different types of things. But you can think about the same thing as when you're leaving this life. What do you want? Do you want music? Do you want scripture? Do you want someone just to read a book to you? Do you want your favorite movie playing? And of course, nobody knows the day or the hour, but during those final days, weeks, months, whatever you have, you can put those plans in place to know that what you want is being enacted. Attending workshops like this, like Amy said, I commend you. If you're looking at this, I commend you for being proactive and taking on the responsibility to make sure that you have all the information that you can have at your fingertips so that you're not caught blindsided, so that you have the ability to be able to make wise decisions and not decisions under stress and duress. But most of all, the main thing in caring for yourself is just basically, caring for the caregiver, caregiving is basically being able to have a plan, having a plan in place to be able to make sure that what that person wants gets enacted, that you know all the things that you need to do as a caregiver. You can ask all the questions that you need to, whether it's estate planning, family planning, end-of-life care, insurance, Medicare, Medicaid, all of those different things, so that you can be in the best position possible to make sure that everything is the way you would like for it to be. So again, I thank the park for having me back again to talk about chaplain services and care for the caregiver, and I wish you all a blessed day.
Reverend Aker, I have a question for you.
Yep.
That others may want to know the answer to. It's funny that you follow Amy. Could you tell us maybe what are some of the positive things that you found when hospice came in to care? What are some of the positive effects of that for a caregiver?
I would say that one of the positive things about having hospice is, as Amy said, you have a dedicated team of individuals that specialize in that service to be able to make sure that you have everything that you need. They have classes available to be able to teach you everything that you need to know about your illness, to help with caregiving. So they have caregiving classes, they have classes based upon your illness so that you can be well informed. And that was a very positive thing for me, because I'm one of those people that I need to know every single thing about what it is that I'm going through. So being able to attend those classes, being able to help my mom understand what those classes were that she could attend and whether she wanted to attend them or not, that was very helpful. Having people to come in several different times a day. So when I was working and my brother was working, we knew that the nurse was coming in. We knew that the aide was coming in. We knew what time that they were coming. They were very prompt. They were very attentive. Once the nurse left, she would call and let me know how things were going. If she had a concern, she would call and let us know as well. So that's one of the most positive things I can think of, is just the fact that this is what they do. They're very dedicated in that. And that's something that you don't get everywhere. So they will definitely walk alongside you in that journey, and just to make sure that you have all the information you need. Good morning, and thanks again to the Park Church, my church, for having me back to talk about Medicare, Medicaid, and what I like to refer to as access and affordability, as we've talked about preparing for life and life's changes. I'm Shauna Barnes, and while I work in pharmaceuticals now, I'm a healthcare advocate just for our community and us as we age and transition through life. As Astra mentioned, just having the information you need so that you're able to make informed decisions. And so today we'll talk about Medicare and Medicaid and some of the other access and affordability options that you have. And I say I get us at the tip of the iceberg. Most often, folks are considering retirement or wanting to take advantage of starting a new career and not real sure how to navigate having coverage and benefits. And it's so important for us to understand what coverage and benefits offers, because in the U.S., without having any sort of insurance, that is a direct impediment to good care. So we'll start by talking about Medicare, and I will try to limit some of the alphabet soup of all the navigational pieces, but to be pretty clear about how Medicare may differ from your commercial plan, when and where you can access and get tapped into those entitlement programs for Medicare, also Medicaid, and some other considerations. So starting with Medicare, which is an entitlement benefit, there are 4 parts, and we've kind of heard some of it in the conversations already about how Medicare can pay for different services, but the 4 parts of Medicare are A, B, C, and D. And A is that traditional benefit that you get without any payment or any requirement. It's really an entitlement service, meaning once you start to receive Social Security, you're eligible to get Medicare Part A. It comes as a part of that plan. And we're either going to get Social Security by virtue of age or by virtue of a disability, and it doesn't really matter how you're deemed eligible for Medicare, but you get with you that traditional Medicare Part A benefit. And Part A is going to cover things that we heard about, like your inpatient hospital stay, nursing facility, home health care, hospice care, those types of things. Patients are enrolled, or individuals are enrolled with their Social Security eligibility, and there's not a premium for that part. I will say, while this benefit is entitlement, it's different from commercial insurance in that there is a deductible required, so it's important to understand what the out-of-pockets are and the limits related to hospital coverage, but Medicare Part A will pick up the vast majority of those services. The second piece is the one that's a little bit more different for us than commercial insurance, and that's Medicare Part B. Part B is the one that you use most often because it's going to cover doctor's visits, lab tests, any sort of equipment or durable medical equipment that we've talked about. It also covers any sort of physician-administered drugs, which we know that medications are very expensive, and with us having chronic conditions sometimes later in life, there may be infusions or daily treatments that we have, but any of those drugs that are administered at your doctor's office are going to be covered under Part B as a part of those outpatient services. Patients must enroll for Part B once they receive eligibility for Medicare, and there is a premium for Part B, meaning there's a component of the Social Security check that is dedicated to covering your Part B. And for 2022, that premium is $170.10 per month. I think that's up about $30 from last year. So as we think about retirement and transition and coverage, you may not think about how you're paying for your premium. You may be thinking about your out-of-pocket for your treatments or your medication, but just know as you look at that benefit from Social Security, you're eligible, you're going to get that hospital coverage, but you also want to consider about $170 or so just to cover the premium for Medicare Part B. And it is important for us as we age to think about how am I getting my coverage for my regular doctor's visits now if I'm working, for example, as a teacher or for the state. When does that benefit transition over to Medicare, and how is that different from what my budget is now? So that's one just to consider as we look at Part B. Part C is a newer benefit in the past 7 to 10 years. That one's considered Medicare Advantage, and that's an opportunity for us to transition to Medicare in a way that kind of looks and feels most like commercial insurance. Medicare Part C or Medicare Advantage
gives the Medicare recipient an option to, rather than having traditional benefit, enroll with a provider that looks like a commercial provider or a health maintenance organization like a Blue Cross Blue Shield, United Healthcare, and I'm not advocating for either. There's just some of those names that I'm certain that you would remember. But those plans have contracted with Medicare and said we're going to offer to Medicare beneficiaries an option to have this commercial-like insurance. Those have good options in that they kind of walk and talk like your commercial insurance. You have everything grouped together, your health care for your hospital, for your outpatient, for your drugs. Oftentimes they will add eyeglasses or dental. And I will pause there and say traditional Medicare does not cover either of those. So without having a Medicare Part C or HMO type of program, you would be on your own as it relates to things like vision or dental services. So it's often important for individuals to look at before there's a concern. You know, I say age 60-ish is the time to really get to understand the language of Medicare and the parts, so that as you're planning an exit from a career and from an insurance that you've had, you know how that really lines up to what Medicare is going to offer. So Medicare Part C or Medicare Advantage looks and feels most like what we become accustomed to as commercial insurance in the U.S. So it's a good place for us to start as we look at benefit plans. Outside of that, if you didn't choose a Medicare Advantage or Part C, an individual would have A, for their hospital, B, for their outpatient and physician services, and then they would have to opt into D for their drug coverage, D as in David. And Medicare Part D is one of the most, I would say, in doing benefits since my first job out of college, I think Medicare Part D is the most difficult to navigate if you're not familiar. There's a fair amount of deductibles, in and out periods that they call a donut hole. I think of a donut hole as a little sweet treat that you might get as a snack. This is not that kind of donut hole. It's kind of like an abyss that you fall into where there's no coverage. So understanding I've got coverage, I get to a dollar amount, I drop out of coverage, and then I come back into coverage. That's what the Medicare donut hole is, and it can be a lot to understand. We're used to having a card, presenting it, knowing what my out-of-pocket is, and I'm covered. But Medicare Part D is a little bit different. And I wouldn't take the time to try to explain all of the levels, but I will say that the Medicare website, Medicare.gov, really has a couple of grids that shares that. And I think from an advocacy perspective, there's individuals at Medicare that can really help you at any time understand with what my drugs are and what that may look like. Additionally, the Department of Social Services, where individuals are able to tap into benefits from Medicaid, has an opportunity. And any of the social workers at the hospital can really help you understand coverage and benefits and what might be necessary. But I think it's important to understand Medicare is an entitlement program. But as with this entitlement program, there are some responsibilities that really live on the beneficiary as it relates to out-of-pocket. For your hospital, it's not as bad. For your physician services, you're responsible for about 20% of your costs. And for your drugs, it can vary anywhere from $1,000 to $10,000, just depending on what treatment regimen you have. So it's so important beforehand to say at 60, I know what my chronic conditions are, I know what maintenance medications I'm on. If I were to choose to take an early retirement at 62, what parts of Medicare am I eligible for? Part A is likely the primary one. 65 is where you're going to get the full gambit of benefits. And what does that look like? What sort of medications do I take today? And what other chronic conditions that I might have that require me to take an infusion monthly or on a regular basis so that we can plan for it. So I think as you talk about Medicare, the entitlement, the benefits, is really understanding how to navigate the out-of-pocket expenses such that our retirement can be happy and fulfilling and not dedicated to spending thousands of dollars a month for prescriptions that were otherwise covered under a commercial plan. So I would think my community of folks to talk to or to advocate for would be at about age 60 or sooner. I mean, having knowledge is power, to make sure that you understand what you may be approaching. The next thing I'll talk about a little bit is Medicaid, Medicaid with a D. And Medicaid is considered a needs-based program, meaning each of the states fund Medicaid. Medicare is funded by the federal government, and we think more about your earnings, your accrual, how much you contributed from a work effort perspective and credits towards your Social Security. Medicaid is for the states, from the states, and it's need-based. It's not an entitlement, so there's nothing that you pay from your property taxes or anything else that entitles you to Medicaid. Medicaid is there for individuals who have a gap in eligibility, but also a gap in need. The biggest question that I've always gotten, and I started my first job out of college as a Medicaid eligibility worker, and everybody wanted to know, can I keep my house? Typically, you can keep your house with Medicaid, but they're gonna run a level of out-of-pocket expenses that you have to meet medical need, but they're gonna also look at your assets. So Medicaid, being need-based, has a very limited amount of assets that a person can have before the state is gonna pick up and pay for your medical coverage. And that asset limit is about $3,000 total per person. So outside of your house and outside of one vehicle, whether it's running or on some bricks, one vehicle, you can have $3,000 in assets, and Medicaid could deem you eligible. So if you're thinking retirement, they're going to consider cash, savings, 401k, any sort of additional properties that you have interest in. So you guys can see $3,000 is not a lot of money for you to have and then be granted access to Medicaid. So it's important to really understand, and I know a part of the program, we have an attorney who really talks about estate planning and really prior to getting to the estate, how to align resources such that we know how to use resources that are available in a way that's advantageous and such that we can get the care that we need. So I would say your Department of Social Services can very easily share with you, but Google is an amazing thing. If we were to Google access assets limits in Medicaid in the state of North Carolina, it tells you. It tells you what's counted, and it tells you what's not counted. So I think it's most important for us to understand Medicare is an entitlement, and there are some limits there where you're going to carry out of pocket most often for your drugs, and Medicaid is not an entitlement. It is a need-based program, and there's a lot of information that you would have to provide to net down your assets to about $3,000 beyond your home and your car before you're eligible to receive Medicaid, and that's an important designation. Now, I will say there's a couple considerations with end-stage renal disease, and I will say our friends that have end-stage renal disease live with a lot of decisions that they have to make, but they are also very informed, and if you're dealing with end-stage renal disease, there are some ways to advance getting access to some of these benefits. So if that's a challenge that you're facing newly, I can say that community is very informed as it relates to access and affordability and can help you navigate how to get beyond some of the other considerations, because that is a chronic condition that requires so much of non-traditional treatment that we don't see every day. So end-stage renal disease takes a little bit more direct path to getting some of these services, and there are a little bit more considerations there. The last thing I will add as we talk about access and affordability is really around accessing drugs and really understanding there's another level of services that are available for us that most often we don't know about through the drug companies by way of patient assistance programs. And each of the patient assistance programs are branded per their product, but for expensive medications, we can reach out to manufacturers through their programs to get patient assistance. And if you're sitting at home watching TV and they say, if you need help with your medication, call 1-800-WE-CARE-FOR-YOU, or whatever the number is. Those are indeed programs that are structured by the pharmaceutical companies to bridge the gap for individuals. And I will say to anyone who's watching, that's not determined by your disability or if you're on Medicare, if you have commercial insurance and you're on a tier 3 drug and you're paying $400 a month, there's very likely a copay card that can get that down to $25 a month or $0 a month. We just have to do the legwork to enroll. So I would say any drug that you may be taking that has a high out-of-pocket that's required for you each month, look that up to say what's the patient assistance program that's offered by that manufacturer. And 9 times out of 10 for those specialty products, there's something there that can increase the level of access for you by decreasing the affordability and shifting it away from you. So I think as we talk about Medicare and Medicaid and just access and affordability, it's a lot of responsibility for us. It's really a different language. I know we're going to have some small breakout groups. I would love to be helpful in terms of directing folks individually and helping build your caregiver network as it relates to navigating coverage for services, but I'm very grateful that we're able to even start the conversations in these areas and can bridge the gaps to other individuals that are well-versed as well. Understanding insurance and coverage is indeed a different language, and I'm grateful that we're able to open that dialogue such that we can increase our knowledge and increase our access and affordability. So thanks to the Park Church, my church, for having me come back again, and to this esteemed panel that has pulled other knowledge to us. We're just grateful to be here to help our community.
Thank you so much. That definitely was informative, and we all need to know the information that was presented. Now we have panel number 4. The topics here are funeral homes, cemeteries, Veterans Administration, and insurance. And we have Brother Alfred Alexander, Brother Damon Miller, Mr. Lance Nelson, and Brother Cal Freeman.
Good morning, and I'd like to thank the Prepare Workshop Committee, Bishop Alexander, and all of those that are here today at this workshop. This, of course, is a very important workshop that they have put together for many years, and I want to give homage to Lady D, who got me involved in this a long time ago and made me come and said, you better keep coming, and that's what they seem to be doing, keeping me coming. And that's a good thing, because this is actually a good thing. Ladies and gentlemen, it's very important. And I'd like to think that preparing yourself for death is highly important. The key to any pre-need, to me, is peace of mind. When I say peace of mind, I'm talking about the peace of mind for yourself. I'm talking about the peace of mind for your family. There are several types of pre-needs that you can get involved in. There's the pre-need that is a trust fund. That's when you put money in a pre-need, and of course that money is placed in a bank, either of your choosing or the choosing of the funeral home entity that you're dealing with. Then there, of course, are insurance pre-needs. You can get a new insurance, or you can deal with some insurance that you already have as it relates to a pre-need. Also, with pre-needs, they are standard and inflation-proof. When I say standard, that means that you can actually go in that pre-need and change some things about it that you may not necessarily have wanted to do at the time you did it. You can come back and work with it, and it's kind of flexible. The inflation-proof pre-need actually protects you as it relates to cost and some, like professional services, for instance. If you took out a pre-need 2 years ago and the professional services may have been $2,000 or $500, and your pre-need of the person that took out the pre-need died this year, next year, whenever, that professional services cannot be changed at the time of death. And that's a good thing. that protects you. Also, your pre-need is protected because it's in the state funeral service board's proximity too, because they know exactly what you did. It's important that when you sit down with your family members that you let them know where your pre-need is. Don't take it home, put it under the sofa, put it in the closet, hide it from yourself and everybody else. They need to know that you actually did come up with what you wanted as related to your death, your wishes, not theirs, because a lot of times their wishes may be somewhat different from what you may have wanted to do. So it's important that you are able to do a pre-need and actually do it where you know what you want, how you want it, because you can even select a cemetery if you want to, but most cemeteries want you to come and talk to them directly as opposed to setting it up with the funeral home, which means you have to sit down with them, deal with that, and I'm sure Brother Miller, who is with us today, will come up with some other ideas as it relates to what cemeteries do as it relates to pre-needs. But it's important that you do the planning. That's why it's pre-needed, because you, and I tell people all the time, they say, well, can I do this, do that? I say, yeah, because right now you're doing it. Your family's not sitting with you, and sometimes they are, but you know what you want as it relates to the casket, as it relates to where you want to go, in terms of is it going to be a chapel service? And of course, we're in difficult days now, and a lot of churches have not opened back up. We're still in the pandemic, and we're trying to scratch our way out of it. But the point is, some entities, some funeral homes even, cannot accommodate you the way you want to be accommodated as it relates to a pre-need. So you need to sit down with a funeral director, plan out your goals, what you want, and pay for it, but you don't have to pay for it immediately with a pre-need. Like I said earlier, you can do a trust fund where you can put down a portion of money and then pay on it monthly or whenever you want to as it relates to covering those costs of a pre-need. You set your costs. When you come into a funeral home, I can't tell you what you want to spend. I can't tell you what you're going to do. You dictate to me what you want to do as it relates to how you're going to spend your money. I don't know how much money you got. I don't even ask you. But when you pick out a certain service, my question to you is, how do you plan to pay for this? That's when we talk money. Not before, not after. I learned years ago, and I started when I was 9 in this business, and thank God I'm 69 today. And I love the business I'm in. I know what I'm doing when it comes to arranging a service. So if you should select Alexander, you're selecting people that have been there. And I strongly suggest that whomever you select, you check them out before you do it, because you need to know the reputation of that firm. You need to know, are they going to be there when you die? We started back before 1914. We put a peg in it and said that we started in 1914. We are the oldest minority business in Mecklenburg County. My grandfather started it. Thank God I'm here today to continue it. And we are able to do whatever any other funeral entity in this city can do, and we think we do it much better. So ladies and gentlemen, I urge you to consult, to plan, to think about the things you want, and put it where it can be found. At the next Thanksgiving dinner, at the next Christmas meal, when you get together, let your people know, this is what I want to do. Let's go and talk to somebody about doing what I want. And then they know, and it makes it easy for them when they sit down with a funeral home that you've already planned with to get it done the way you want it. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Damon Miller, and I'm representing Gethsemane Cemetery and Memorial Gardens here in Charlotte, North Carolina. And I would like to take this opportunity, first of all, to say a very special thank you to Bishop Claude Richard Alexander, and also the Prepare Workshop team for allowing us to come today to share with you in this workshop. I want to echo a lot of the sentiments that Mr. Alexander from Alexander Funeral Home has talked about this morning. I want to say to you that we are still in critical times. It's very important now that you decide to pre-plan not only at the funeral home, but pre-plan at the cemetery as well. There are four things that I would like to talk to you about that you would need at a cemetery in order to pre-plan. The first is a space. You know, my grandmother will often say it's called a lot or a plot. It's all the same thing, a space. You will need a vault, and that's what your casket would sit inside of in the ground. The opening and closing, and also a memorial marker, or they would used to call it a tombstone. So there are four things that you need there in a cemetery in order for burial purposes. Why do we pre-plan? We pre-plan to protect our children and our grandchildren from future emotional and financial burdens. We pre-plan because we are able to plan together as a family. We pre-plan because we prevent family arguments. I'm going to say that again. We pre-plan to prevent family arguments. That means, you know, we know what Mama said she wanted because she said what she wanted. We pre-plan because it provides easy payment options. And we pre-plan because it can be funded through a medical spend down. Whether you're buried or whether you're cremated, we have a service there at Gethsemane for you. You can be buried in the ground, or you can be buried above ground, entombed in a mausoleum. Or if you decide to be cremated, we do have a special place for you to house your cremated remains, and that's called a niche inside of the mausoleum. We are a premier cemetery there at Gethsemane Memorial Gardens. We've served many, many, many families from the Park Church. Also, Lady D, we give honor to her as well. She's resting there at Gethsemane Cemetery. And listen, we do a phenomenal job as far as honoring the life of that person who has passed on. Our staff sets up a nice tribute table to honor that life of their favorite things. We do a dove release ceremony in honor of that person. We also play their favorite music and give their favorite candy bar, their pastime meal to make sure that everyone leaves honoring that person who has passed on. That doesn't cost our families anything. That's something we do to bless every family leaving their loved one there at Gethsemane Cemetery. We do that because we want to honor that life. We want to honor that life. And that sets us apart from any other cemetery in our area. How you pre-plan at Gethsemane, you come in, you sit down with me, and you say, hey, Damon, I like this area in the cemetery. I like this area in the cemetery. What you would do is you would put something down, $10, $15, $20, $50, anything you wish to start that contract to make a monthly payment until you pay it off. I typically give all of my families 1 year free of interest to pay it off, so you don't have to worry about interest at all. We can debit your account, or we can send you a coupon book in the mail in order for you to mail your payments in. But we make it so easy for each and every one of you to pre-plan. Pre-planning freezes that price. So whether you need it today, whether you need it 15 years from now, you're not going to pay any more or any less. I often tell families all the time, cemetery cost goes up every year, and it doubles every 10 years. So it's very, very important that you come in, you sit down, and you make that pre-plan. Back in the day when my grandmother was making her arrangements, she told me she spent $400 for a plot. And that was for opening and closing as well. Times have changed, ladies and gentlemen. Times have changed. So we ask that you come out, look for yourself, see what you want, lock in today's price in order for you to have what you want when you leave this world. Thank you so much, and I look forward to seeing you at Gethsemane Cemetery.
Good Good morning. Again, my name is Lance Nelson. I'm with the Department of Veteran Affairs in the Vet Center program. And today I'm going to talk to you about the three different branches of the Department of Veteran Affairs. First of all, you have the Benefits Administration, which is based out of Winston-Salem, North Carolina. What they do is they help veterans get their disability benefits, education benefits. They work with veterans and their spouses, their widows, for the Widows and Veterans Pension. So let's begin here. So with the Benefits Administration, again, one of the first things that you can apply for is a disability benefit. Now, if while you were in the military, if you were injured while in the military, if there was a presumptive illness, like for instance the Vietnam veterans were subjected to Agent Orange, and there are some presumptive illnesses that Agent Orange causes, veterans can get service connected for that. So you have anywhere from 0 up to 100% for the disability. Again, depending on how severe the disability is would determine what kind of rating you would get. Also, with a rating, with the exception of 0, there is a small monthly monetary fee that you'll get from the VA as compensation. Zeros, now a lot of people say, well, I got a 0, I'm not service connected. That's incorrect. Even if you have a 0 for a disability that the VA is acknowledging, yes, you do have a service-connected disability. However, it is not severe enough to warrant a higher rating. So I would encourage you all, if you were ever injured while you were in the military, get a copy of your military medical records. You go to either the county or the state Veterans Service Office. I think the VFWs, the American Legions, and the Disabled American Veterans Association all have veteran service officers that work for them that can help you free of charge. One thing I would advise against is seeking a lawyer. A lot of times, there is a loophole that they use to get fees from the veteran for helping with that disability. So the county and state veteran service officers are trained and certified to assist you with your disability. So again, let's say you go in, you apply for a service-connected disability, and you get 10%, okay? Let's say that disability, I'm going to use, say, a knee, for instance. You get 10% for your left knee, and it's affected your gait, the way you stand. Well, eventually it's going to wear out your other knee, both of your hips, and your lower back. And when that happens, you go get new medical evidence from a doctor stating that your service-connected disability has caused one of these secondary conditions. You can take that to the VA and apply for disability, again, to get those other issues related that are related to your primary service-connected disability connected, and that will give you an increase depending on the severity of those disabilities. The other one is, let's say you go into the military and you have allergies of some kind, and the military has aggravated that disability, then you can apply for a disability for those allergies as long as you have medical evidence showing that it has aggravated your disability. So having that service-connected disability too also, and we'll cover it more in VA healthcare, but gets you additional benefits inside the VA healthcare system as well. Having a 10% service-connected disability, you get your VA funding fees waived. 30%, you get to claim dependents. Get a little extra money for that. At 50%, if you're a military retiree, you get your military retired pay plus 50% on top of that. Now, that's not 50% of your military pay. That's what the VA determines to be 50%. If it's below 50%, they take that money out of your retirement check and they give it back to you tax-free. So definitely, if you feel that you have a service-connected disability and you've got your military medical records, go down and see one of the county veteran service officers, and they can definitely get you taken care of with that VA disability. Next, I want to talk to you about VA healthcare. VA healthcare, again, if you have a service-connected disability over 50%, you go into Category 1. All of your VA healthcare is free. 30 to 40% is Category 2, 10 to 20% Category 3, and so on. Whatever you are service-connected for, go see the VA doctor first before you go to your outside doctor, because if it's service-connected, if you need a back brace, a cane, some kind of assistive device to help you with your VA disability, the VA will take care of that for you. And that's why I say go to them first. I'll use myself as an example. I am retired Air Force, so I have TRICARE. Also, being a VA employee, I have the Federal Blue Cross Blue Shield, which, I have pretty good health care insurance, but I still use VA for anything I'm service connected for. Being around jets for quite a while, I've got some hearing loss, so I get free hearing aids from the VA. Free batteries, free maintenance on those hearing aids. Outside, they would cost, between $5,000 and $6,000 for those hearing aids. And then you have to pay for the batteries and all the maintenance, keep up on those. So go to the VA first to see if you can get it from the VA. Now, the VA still has a rule in place that if you do make too much money, you don't qualify. That's why I tell veterans, when you get out, apply for VA health care right away, even if you don't need it, because once you have a legal enrollment in VA health care, you'll always be enrolled in VA health care. The other thing is, again, you've got the Benefits Administration and the Healthcare Administration. Since we're two, even though we both fall under VA, but we're two separate entities, if you have a service-connected disability and you are enrolled in VA healthcare, if you move, you need to make sure that you notify the Benefits Administration of your new address and the Healthcare Administration of your new address, because if you don't, if you only notify, say, one, then your VA doctor's not going to know where you are, and you may kind of fall into the back burner if you don't get a doctor appointment to get a checkup. Or if you don't notify the Benefits Administration and they send you notification that they want to do a reevaluation, you may get dropped if you miss that appointment. So you definitely want to make sure you notify both agencies of your new address. Now, in VA healthcare, again, anything that's a presumptive illness, the VA will take care of. They also have an Agent Orange registry that if you are a Vietnam veteran, you need to get enrolled in that registry and ask for that environmental, physical. This way here, they can check to see if you have any of the presumptive illnesses. And that way there, they can take care of those illnesses if needed. This year, they did add a few extra disabilities for Agent Orange. I believe hyperthyroidism is one of them. Off the top of my head, I cannot remember the other two, but definitely check with your veteran service officer, again, because they do have the updated list. So if you were in Vietnam, definitely go see your veteran service officer about the new update. Also, with the Iraq-Afghanistan veterans, they've approved respiratory illnesses because of the burn pits. So definitely you want to get enrolled in the burn pit registry as well for the Iraq-Afghanistan veterans. Here in Charlotte, we have Salisbury being the main VA medical center. We also have the Charlotte Healthcare Center off Billy Graham and Tyvola, which has pretty much all the specialists you need, with the exception of an emergency room. It does have what they call same-day access, meaning if you're sick and you need to go in and see a doctor, more than likely you'll see a doctor or a nurse, but again, it does not have an emergency room. For the nearest emergency room, you have to go all the way to Salisbury. And then we still have the outpatient clinic up in the university area that is open with primary care. I'm also going to talk to you about the program I'm in, the Vet Center program. So the Vet Center program, we're located up in the university area as well. We work with combat vets dealing with post-traumatic stress. We work with veterans who've been subjected to military sexual trauma. We also provide bereavement counseling for family members that may have lost a loved one while serving on active duty. Our program is free for those veterans. All we ask is that you have a DD-214. And, oh, by the way, if you do need a copy of your DD-214, I can assist you with that. At getting a copy of it. It's pretty easy for me to access the DoD website for those veterans who got out after 1994. So if you got out after 1994 and you don't have a DD-214, definitely come and see me and I can order that for you. If you got out before 1994, I can still get it. The process does take a little longer because we have to go through the archives. But again, that DD-214, it's a critical document. I tell veterans to treat it like your birth certificate because it does follow you to the very end. Now back to my program, we have a new change here recently where we actually start seeing Guard and Reserve members who've been activated for a natural disaster. We also see post 9/11 veterans, regardless if they were in combat or not. That's a new change this past January that came out. Again, what we do is secondary counseling for post-traumatic stress and military sexual trauma. There are over 300 vet centers nationwide. We have 2 mobile vet centers in this state. Occasionally you may see it here at the church or somewhere around town. Definitely go check it out. It's a cool vehicle. The last program I want to talk to you about in the Department of Veteran Affairs is the National Cemetery. Now, I'm going to go back to the DD-214. The DD-214, you must have that DD-214. I believe you have to have an honorable discharge in order to be buried in a national cemetery. Now, funerals do cost money. If you had a service-connected disability and, let's say, were killed in a car crash, the VA would pay $300 in burial expenses. If you had a service-connected disability and you passed away from that service-connected disability, then there is a $2,000 burial expense that the VA will pay. But again, you must have that DD-214, and I always tell veterans, keep a special file with all your paperwork that you get from the VA, because eventually you may need that paperwork. Now, a lot of times you can get your DD-214 from the funeral homes. You can pre-register your DD-214 with the National Cemetery, and what that does, it takes out the vetting process so that it doesn't guarantee you a certain spot in the National Cemetery, but it does vet that you are an honorably discharged veteran and that you are entitled burial in the National Cemetery. Now, I believe there are 2 national cemeteries here in North Carolina. The closest one we have is up in Salisbury, where the veteran can be buried at that national cemetery. If, let's say, that veteran was married and his spouse passed away, then that spouse can be buried at the national cemetery as well. If that veteran chooses to get married again, and that spouse passes away, that spouse can be buried at the National Cemetery. If that veteran chooses to get married again, and that spouse passes away, I'm sure the FBI would be curious to find out what's going on, but that spouse can be buried at the National Cemetery as well. All kidding aside, if the veteran has disabled children that are living with that veteran, and those children do pass away, then those children can be buried in the National Cemetery as well. But definitely make sure that your funeral home director has a copy of your DD-214. Make sure the County Veteran Service Office has a copy of that DD-214. Make sure your families, your children, all know where that DD-214 is, because it's an important document for the veteran and that family upon burial of that veteran. Okay, well, that's pretty much all I have. If anybody does have any questions for me, the church can reach out to me, and I'd be more than happy to answer any questions. Thank you all, and have a great day.
Hello, everyone. I would like to first give honor to God, my Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ, to our pastor, Bishop Claude Richard Alexander, Jr., our First Lady, Dr. Kim Alexander, all the ministers, all the staff here at the Park Church, Betty Ford's Road, who helped organize the prepared workshop, and you, the Park family. Thank you for listening to information being shared, not only from me, but our other distinguished guests here today. I'd like to give honor to my family, which truly gives me the inspiration to get up and get out each and every day that I live and I breathe. My wife, Minister Lisa Freeman, who has been by my side for 35 years. Our daughter, Kylisa, our son, Kyle Jr., KJ. Thank you, Reverend Taz, for the invite, considering me to speak on such an invaluable subject. Thank you to Dr. McGuire and Reverend McGuire, who we refer to as Lady D, for the vision to create the prepared workshop. This is an incredible opportunity for families to get information that is needed all in one place, all at one time for our communities, and I applaud you all. A portion of my favorite scripture says, "A good man leaves an inheritance to his children's children." Portion of my next favorite scripture says, "He who walks with the wise grows wise." And I say that to you all today as I talk about my chosen profession of insurance. My question to you is, what is insurance? And that's a very important question, especially in today's time, as my colleagues have just talked about. Let me give you the definition of insurance. Insurance is a contract represented by a policy in which an individual or entity receives financial protection or reimbursement against losses from an insurance company. Why is it used? Insurance policies are used to hedge against the risk of financial loss, both big and small, that may result from damage to the insured or their property, or from liability or damage or injury caused to a third party. What I would like to talk about today is, how can life insurance help us? First, we should understand there are two types of life insurance: whole life and term life. Whole life is permanent life insurance, which means the insured person is covered for the duration of their life as long as the premiums are paid on time, which puts meaning to the word whole life. Term life is a type of life insurance that has a specific end date, usually between 10 and 30 years from the start date. The death benefit will only be paid out if the policyholder dies during the chosen term. The benefit can also be decreasing, meaning it shrinks over time, typically in a one-year increment setting. Whole life is called participating. Term life is called non-participating. Let me give you the definition of participating and non-participating. For those of you that may not have heard that term before, when you hear someone talk about participating, what that means is that the life insurance company is participating in revenue sharing with the client. Non-participating means that the client's life insurance is not participating in revenue sharing. Most of the time, that deals with terms. So if you have a whole life policy, most of the time you're building up what we call cash value. And most of the time a term policy is not doing that. Also, too, some of the things that you might want to take a look at is the ratings of the company. Two companies that are the major ones are Standard & Poor's and also AM Best. They can tell you what kind of company you have, because you want to make sure there's financial strength in case you do need the policy to pay out. If they got a bad rating, you might not want to deal with that company because you may be on hold for hours at a time and may not talk to anybody except for a computer, okay? But here lies the problem most of the time. It's a fact that it costs money when a family member dies, yet many people never give it a moment's thought. Most of the time, family members do not want to discuss these matters. However, 20% of deaths occur suddenly and without warning. And I'm sure due to the current situation we're in right now with COVID-19, that number has increased. I would put these questions to you and also ask you to address these with your family. maybe over dinner, scheduled family meeting, even during the holidays. But this is very important. Number one, will a death in your family leave dollars or debt? Number two, would your family be prepared for a financial burden? Number three, if a death occurred in your family, would it change your household income? Number four, are you the major breadwinner in your house? Number five, did you know Social Security pays out $225? Did you know Veteran Benefits pays out $734? And did you know that you only get either one of those if you qualify? After death of a spouse, family income or Social Security may be reduced by 50 to 100%. My last question, do you have a life insurance plan in place if something like this occurred to you? If not, when will you get you and your family situation in order? I can guarantee you this, we will all leave Earth one day. Will you be prepared?
For our fourth and last panel, our topics, again, are caregiving, young adult outlook, new this time, cybersecurity, and the Park Church bereavement process. And our presenters are Brother Earl McLaurin, Reverend Quinn Rogers, Minister Zach Thomas, Minister Catherine Mahoney, and Reverend Dr. Major McGuire III.
Hello, my name is Earl McLaurin. I just want to share with you some experiences that I've had as being a long-term caregiver for my dad, along with assisting my mom, is what I want to say. So, won't keep you long, but I just want, and hopefully something I say will be very, very helpful for you and your family. My dad was diagnosed with dementia. First signs that we kind of noticed is when we were taking a trip in Rhode Island, he would start going in the wrong door in the hotel, matter of fact, in the room, mistakenly the bathroom door for the closet door. We kind of noticed that, and we just kind of just shoved it off a little bit. And that happened in 2011. We had taken some other trips, and then we started seeing him wanting, and Daddy didn't mind going on trips, staying in hotels, but then he wanted to get back home. I always wanted to get back home. I'm ready to go back home. I'm ready to go back home. So we knew it was something. So we had him go to Duke University, and they ran a few tests, and it came back. He had early stages of Alzheimer's, which are early stage of a vascular dementia. And at that point, we knew we had to do something. At least I thought we had to do something. My mom wasn't too straightforward with me in the very beginning. She would cover for him on a lot of things, and I kind of look, and then when you look back, you realize that there was a lot of times that you could have said, something's not right, something like that. But Mommy always covered for Daddy. They had been married for over 50 years, so, she knew him better than anybody, so if she would say something was wrong, I would go along with it. So once we got him diagnosed and we knew what it was, we had to get him some help. I came home over the weekend, and Mommy was just burnt out, tired, because Daddy would get up, walk, he would start leaving, walking out the door, and all this stuff was going on, but I wasn't privy to too much of it. And like I said earlier, when you've been married that long, you're going to look out for your husband, and she did. She was protecting him in such a way. We later found out that I had to get them help. Went to social service. I went around just trying to find what agencies or something where they can get some help. But due to the fact of your assets, you may not qualify for certain programs. So I ran into a young lady, Erica. I remember her down at social service, and she worked for an agency. and she shared an attorney's name with me to give him a call. He can help you. And so I did. And I called him, told him my story, and he said, the only way you can get help or assistance, you're going to have to move some of your assets around. And I had been to programs where they say it has to be 5 years before assets would have to be removed. Then they said 7 years. So I had different things in my head, but I wasn't sure. But a good elderly care attorney who knows his stuff can make sure things happen. And this guy had 2 offices, one in Fayetteville, one in Southern Pines. For those who don't know, Southern Pines is where a lot of rich people go to play golf and retire. So I was able to get him, and he showed us exactly what he was going to do. He moved my dad's name off the deed of the house, moved my name on the deed of the house, which immediately took the real estate asset away from my dad. He did some other steps to reduce his assets, which then allowed him to qualify for assistance. We ended up getting assistance for him, and like I said, Mommy was tired. She was taking care of Daddy 24/7. Something like respite, someone that would come in, help, and give her a break and things like that. Young man by Tremaine, he was great. Mommy interviewed him. She was very apprehensive in the very beginning of the type of person she wanted to sit with Dad, be with Dad. But over the years, and I mean it's been years, it's been 12 years, Tremaine has been there for us, helped out, would keep Dad, would take him to appointments. They would go out to the fish camp and eat. And as Daddy declined his health, he'd tell Mr. Earl, eat any kind you want. You want to eat with your hands, eat with your hands. As long as you eating, that's fine. That's all we care about. And so Tremaine really became not my dad's caregiver, but he became a part of the family, to the point that whenever my son got married, I invited him, and his mom came up and things like that. The relationship is real important. But we were able to get him help, and that's what's the most crucial thing, is getting a person help. Because there's certain medications that they can get that may slow the disease down somewhat, but help is very important. And some people just don't want to ask for help. And sometimes you don't know who to ask for help. So hopefully by coming and us sharing, you will say, hey, look, I need help. I need help, and I can't do it by myself. When COVID came about, I ended up bringing Mom and Dad here with me to Charlotte, and they stayed here. That way I could watch them. And then I got a chance to work from home at that particular time. And by working from home, I can go downstairs in the guest room, make sure everything was fine, make sure he was eating, make sure. Then I became not only his caregiver, I ended up helping Mommy to do caregiving, but I was taking care of her, making sure that she had an opportunity. Mommy, here, eat something, even to the day. Mommy, eat something. Well, God so blessed me to be in a great position, and I thank him for that. But in March 3rd of 2022, my dad passed away. And so when I look back over things, and I'm telling you, even with his insurance, we experienced problems with his insurance. His insurance listed Mommy as his beneficiary. Her insurance listed him as her beneficiary. But for some reason, the insurance company could not find the paperwork that named which we call the application of the original policy. And I called the insurance company, called them several times. Now, I'm an insurance agent, licensed, have my own agency, but they didn't buy the insurance through me because it was years and years and years ago. But I was able to talk to them, and later on found out that they didn't have the application. Without the application, they can't distinguish who the beneficiary was. The other thing is the agent was no longer available. They had gone out. So things I'm telling you is, hey, when you have an insurance policy, make sure now, as an agent, I keep a copy. But also, you need to keep a copy of your insurance policy as well as a copy of the application. So that's one thing I would recommend. And it's crucial that you get good help early, because as they start to decline, their mental status start to decline, you may not get documentation where they may feel that they are not mentally capable of making decisions. So as soon as you start seeing those signs, I would recommend you start getting legal work and documentation started. And be careful who you share it with, and be careful how much information you share, which is real important. So hopefully something that I've said today, shared with you, and if you ever have any questions or concern, just give me a call. I'm more than happy to help you or bounce something off of me where I may not have the answer, but I might be able to instruct you on the right place to go. But like I said, it's crucial that if possible you get them help as soon as possible, and the caregiver is the most important person, because they sometimes will not share everything with you, and themselves are just burned out, and you may not see it. Fortunately, I went home and saw it. If I would have stayed and just talked on the phone with mommy all the time, I may not have seen it. So sometimes you got to get home and put your eyes on the caregiver to make sure everything's okay.
So I want to speak from the perspective of the young adults. I've been fortunate to be in leadership positions that allowed me to see so many things. As a leader of a church here in the city a couple of years ago, I was able to see what life could look like if there was no planning in place, planning for death. I was leading a group of young people, and as the story goes, I told one of them to get life insurance before they journey out. And of course, I made the introduction to them, had them to call the State Farm agent, who happens to be a member of this congregation. This was 2 weeks before they were actually supposed to take the missional journey. They get all the way out on the other side of the United States of America, only to be killed in an automobile collision. I immediately contacted the State Farm agent, and they told me that there were no life insurance policies that was taken out. And so then begins how we're going to pay for this funeral, right? And GoFundMe became the option. Now, thankfully, she was known, and so individuals began to contribute to her GoFundMe plan. But I want to pause right there and deal with GoFundMe for young people. GoFundMe is not an insurance policy. It is crowdfunding. Furthermore, with GoFundMe, folk got to like you or like your family, or you'll have a $5,000 amount and only get $300. And then the other side of that is people know folk may not have liked you like you thought. No, I'm just playing. But the reality of it is GoFundMe is not a viable option. You need to get insurance. So this same challenge came up again. This time it was with my older brother. And my brother turned 40 in February of 2020. And we thank God for Minister Wilson and his visionary leadership, along with our bishop, who knew that WINS, which was a financial literacy program, would be a program that the church would need. During one of those sessions, they talked about leaving a legacy and possibly getting insurance, life insurance, or some type of insurance to be able to take care of your family. That was February 9th, 2020. My brother turned 40. A couple of weeks later, I texted him. I said, hey, yo, G, hey man, I know you 40, happy birthday, all that good stuff, but I need you to get life insurance. In the event something happens to you, we as a family will be able to take care of you. He said, sure, not a problem, I'll do it. That was February 2020, March 30th, 2020, my brother was deceased. And it was from something as simple as a blood clot. Go to sleep, and he just did not wake up. Thankfully, he was able to have life insurance in place. And for those reasons, he was able to leave a legacy for which my mother, my brother, and myself, we were able to make his final arrangements, and my mother was able to move forward with her life, along with Embry and I. And one of the things that I learned throughout that process is this: have your affairs in order. It doesn't matter how old you are. You can be here today and gone today. And one of the things that I also learned is this: as we're aging, one of the problems with young people is this. Sometimes, let me qualify that, not all young people, some. We get so busy with our lives that, number one, our affairs are not always in order. But then number two, you don't even know the affairs of your parents, and that's scary. So let me start with number one. With your affairs, make sure that your insurance policies are in order. Let me go a little deeper. Your next of kin and your beneficiary are not the same person all the time. Make sure that your beneficiary and your next of kin know each other, have a great relationship, and they can be able to take care of your final expenses. I won't go deeper in that. I'll let others deal with that part. But that's something that you just need to keep in mind. Number two, with your parents, know their wishes. Know where their policies are located. Be able to have that conversation with them. That is not to say, like myself, that someone's going to die a month later. But what I will say is this: when the transition comes, it's better to have everything in order than to have a family feud. No one wins when the family feuds. And so I am thankful that A, my brother had his affairs in order, B, that my brother and I, we have had this discussion with my mother, and then C, with regards to myself, my affairs are in order just in case the Lord should call my name. And here's what I know about death. When the angel of death shows up at your door, don't matter what kind of bolt lock, what kind of tight lock you have, it has a key and it's coming in. And when that time comes, be prepared to meet your maker, and that way you can walk down the streets of gold. God bless you.
Hello, my name is Minister Zach Thomas, and I'm an associate minister here at the park, and I'm a software engineer by trade. One of the things we often don't think about or talk about when it comes to afterlife care is what to do about our data, what to do about our digital afterlife, if you will. So I want to talk about that today and give you hopefully some helpful ideas and tips to help you plan for that as well. First of all, as we know, we spend a lot of time on our devices. Our phones are always with us, our tablets, our computers, even our watches. We're consuming and transmitting a lot of data minute by minute each day. So we're transmitting things like our login credentials, our financial information, your favorite pictures on your favorite social media platform, and of course important files like maybe tax returns or special documents that we want to keep close by and keep safe. So what do we do with that? What do we do with our data after we're gone? Well, I have a few ideas for you. But first of all, we have to remember, the internet is forever. And that is to say that your data, once it's transmitted on a platform, it lives there forever. So you have to think about that, well, and ask the question, what can I do about that after I'm gone if I would like to do something about it? So first things first, one of the most frequent pieces of data that we transmit are passwords. Think about it. We log into our email. We log into our favorite bank. We log into our favorite food app to order food and have it delivered. We log into all sorts of things. And I don't know about you, but I don't like keeping up with a lot of passwords. So personally, I use a password manager. And I've known this to be very helpful for several years. Password managers do things like keep tabs on all of our passwords. They can provide password audits to let us know what passwords are good versus the ones that aren't that great and easy to guess. They also can help us change our passwords very effortlessly in such a way that we don't have to keep up with remembering them all, because that's what those applications do. And they can also automate their own backup of what they have, the data they have for your passwords on their own as well. A few password managers that are out there, applications that you can use, are password applications like 1Password, Keeper, Bitwarden, and Dashlane. Those password managers are cross-platform, meaning that they work on just about any device, any computer, any tablet, any phone. But then there are also some password managers that are kind of built in to some devices. For Apple devices, Keychain is built into every Mac, every iPad, and every iPhone. And then Key2Pass to Android. KeePass to Android is an Android-only equivalent. Basically, it just makes it a little bit more easier to summon a password when you need it and fill it in the right place so you can get where you're trying to go. They typically keep a database of all of your user credentials, your login credentials, and they can be passed on to others after you've passed away. I know for a fact the 1Password application even has a emergency toolkit feature where it will print out a QR code that you can give to someone else or have given to someone else after you've passed away, such that when they scan that QR code, they will get access to your passwords and can use them if that's the person you've delegated. Now, other than passwords, another thing that we frequent very often these days is social media accounts. We use things like Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn. I mean, all kinds of social media accounts. And one of the things we don't think about is, well, what happens to my account or my page after I'm gone? Of course, you can never time death, so it just happens. But you can log in and make adjustments to your settings so that after that time comes, your page can also change as well. You can have your page changed so that it doesn't show up in the search, or you can have it changed so that if people still want to post, they have to have already friended you, and it works with your privacy settings so that people aren't finding your account accidentally. And then, of course, you can have your page basically deleted, but they typically ask that a loved one or a family member certify your death, and then they will delete that data from their database. So Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, and LinkedIn offer the same, if not similar, ability to have all of these things done. Now, the other thing we log into, I'd say pretty frequently, is email. I mean, email is almost synonymous with phone numbers these days, right? So one of the things you have to think about is, well, if I have important email in here that I want someone else to have after I'm gone, or something, an important document that maybe I've stored in a conversation and you want to contain that context for someone else to pick up, then you can set some settings in Google Mail specifically such that there is a timeout period. So let's say something happens and your email account has not been accessed for over 3, 6, 9, 12, or 18 months. After that time, the delegate that you've selected and you've pre-chosen to receive access will receive a message saying that this person is likely deceased and that they chose you as the delegate, and they would get that information. If you are using Google Mail with two-factor authentication turned on, you will still need to make sure that person also has your device that they receive the second factor notification on, such that they can log in successfully. Which leads me to another kind of little side street here. It may be a good idea to store your biometric information on that person's phone as well, so that your face and your fingerprint will unlock it, and it's easier for you to share it with them after they've passed away. This makes it a lot more seamless. Now, the last piece I will mention here, which is a big deal, something that we should all be doing, is backing up our files. There's a Navy SEALs mantra that says, 2 is 1, 1 is none. So if you only have one copy of something that you really feel is important, you don't really have anything, because the minute that copy goes missing, it's gone. So I've backed up things like my wedding photos, my children's birth photos, special moments that I've captured on video, tax return information, just anything you feel that you want to keep more than a few years and be able to reflect on and pull up at a moment's notice. You can back it up online using services like Dropbox, OneDrive, iCloud, or Box.com. You can also use physical devices like an external hard drive or a USB thumb drive, or even a little SD card about the size of a postage stamp. On your Windows machine, there's a feature called Windows History that will walk back in time. If that's been enabled, you'll be able to walk back in time on the history of your files and recover some files that way. Apple has a feature called Time Machine that does something similar. And then lastly, you can also use a writable Blu-ray, DVD, or CD-ROM to have a hard disk, if you will, of data that you have saved. So I just want to encourage you once again to do these 4 things. Use a password manager, add a social media legacy account, use your inactive email account manager if you're using Google Mail, and then back up your files and manage that access. That will save you a great deal of headache and heartache later on in life, not just after you're gone, but even now when you're looking for something that you need that's important. So thank you for your time.
Let me greet everyone and let you know how wonderful it is to have you share this time with us on today. I'm here to share with you about the Congregational Care and Servant Resources Ministry role here at the Park Church. It's just a privilege to be a part of the Park Church under the leadership of Bishop Alexander and a truly gifted Kingdom team. He has defined the focus of our ministry here at the Park, as we always say, extending the love, the life, and the lordship of Jesus Christ. Now, most of the time when we are ministering to people in our ministry, it's because of life's challenges. And we know that life's challenges can make us feel so isolated. And in the wake of COVID-19, those challenges and that feeling of isolation have just increased. And so now, more than ever, we are committed to supporting initiatives to enhance the health and the well-being of our congregation and our community. In the wake of physical distancing, we want to ensure we remain spiritually connected. Now more than ever, we remain focused on extending the love of Jesus Christ. Now we know the only thing constant in life is change. And the pandemic has taught us all that God is the only thing that does not change. We've learned that life happens, and it happens when you least expect it. Life happens in the form of critical long-term illnesses, a loved one declining in the wake of Alzheimer's disease, being the primary caregiver for elderly parents, and balancing that need against the need to be a spouse, a parent, or a person in your own right. One of the most devastating life challenges is the loss of a loved one. These challenges are isolating, and they can change the entire landscape of our lives. Our pastor strongly believes and advocates that we should build our lives on a solid spiritual foundation so that we can stand and withstand life's storms and challenges. Being a part of a spiritual community is a part of that foundation. It is in community that we find our strength. We're reminded that we are not alone. And so the Congregational Care team is dedicated to bringing comfort, compassion, care, and creating that sense of community. This ministry serves as a means of support to all during crisis situations in our Christian walk with God. Through this ministry, the church extends acts of love and service to meet the needs of others. We are a resource for those challenged with illness and a comfort to those who are experiencing grief or loss of loved ones. We believe in the power of prayer, but we also believe in the power of presence. Jesus is Emmanuel, God with us. We serve a God who is our refuge and strength and ever-present help in the time of trouble. Isaiah tells us that we can fear not, for God is with us. We can be not dismayed, for he is our God. He promises that he will strengthen us, he will help us, he will uphold us with his righteous right hand. And we are here to reinforce the fact that you are never alone, that God loves you enough that he always has a provision in place for you. And so God has strategically placed us in place so that you can receive the love and the support to not only survive, but to thrive. We want to be that visible, tangible reminder of the love of God, that he is there and he cares. So we must be there and we must care to meet the needs of our congregation during life's changing and challenging situations. So I want to tell you a little bit about the members that serve on this team and begin introducing you to what we do. Bishop Alexander has strategically and prayerfully chosen a team of people who, through virtue of their training and their experience, they're both skilled and compassionate, capable and caring, and they're equipped to meet your needs, well able to come alongside you throughout the process, whether it is grief and loss, whether it is long-term care, or care for the caregiver. Dr. Major McGuire III is our leader, the patriarch of the team. He serves along with Dr. Raynette Covington and Deaconess Tondra McLaurin in our counseling ministry. Reverend Tazwell Henderson is, among other things, the Director of Experience and Assimilation and co-lead of the men's ministry, but he also serves on this ministry as well. Reverend Quinn Rogers, who you just heard from, is our young adult representative. And please note that Dr. McGuire, Reverend Henderson, and Reverend Rogers have all served as pastors before joining the team at the park, so they are well equipped to help you through life circumstances. We want to provide compassion, we want to provide care, and we want to provide community. We want to provide prayer and presence, comfort, and counseling. We want to stand in the gap to keep you ever mindful again that you are not alone. Now, communication is foundational to any community. If we don't know, we can't be of assistance. And so communication is the key. And I would emphasize that when it comes to the loss of a loved one, it is vital that you contact us sooner rather than later. Dr. McGuire is very adept at leading you through the process, and when you are emotional and in shock, it helps to have him come in at the beginning of the process so that he can guide you through the process. Part of my task is the communications aspect of it. Once somebody contacts the church, we begin the process of information gathering. And showing them compassion at this stage is critical to the process. We not only want to get the details of who passed and how we can contact them, we want to give them an opportunity to tell their story. Quite often, in the wake of grief and loss, there is a story to be told, and they need to know that somebody cares enough to listen with compassion and comfort. And so we get notice of loss through many different avenues. We might get a phone call, we might get an email, someone may come to the church to give us in-person notification. But rest assured, if you do place a call to the church during non-business hours, we have an emergency line in place that notifies us of all times when a call has come through. And so we will be notified that you have sought out help. Once we are notified, it may be a member of the park or a church family, or It may be just a friend in ministry or a volunteer that lets us know what's going on. And the first part of that process is completion of what we call the deceased information sheet. This gives us information on how to contact you or how to contact the family member who will be in charge of the services. It lets us know what you're thinking about in terms of the funeral process, whether you want the church to be involved in that, or whether you're going to take your family member home to another location. But all that information is gathered together, and it is if Dr. McGuire or I didn't take it in the first place, then it is shared with us so that we can then disseminate that information to the pastor, to the Kingdom team, to the deacons and the deaconesses, and we announce those losses on Sunday morning. And all that is a part of the communication process. We want as many caring people as possible to know that you are standing in the need and standing in the need of prayer. And so an email notification is made to everybody, and then it is followed up. Once we know the details of the homegoing service, it is followed up. Now, in the wake of COVID, and Dr. McGuire will go into detail with this, about this with you, in the wake of COVID, the whole nature of how a homegoing service is handled has changed. But one thing has not changed is that to get through that process, you need the love and the care and the compassion that we're ready and able to give. Also, Dr. McGuire is very adept at advising you and so is Reverend Rogers, of the current limitations that we have in services. Whether they should be graveside or at the funeral home, there's often a limitation to the number of people that can actually attend the service. And so we want to be a help. We disseminate this information so that people can be in touch with you, send cards, call, text, be of support, be at the services if that's at all possible. But underlying everything we do, we want you to know again that it's about care and compassion and community. And Dr. McGuire is going to go into more detail about what our process is like.
What a joy it is to greet you this morning, and I take joy in sharing with you more in detail about our care and compassion, particularly during the time of a loss or sickness in the family. I serve as Director of Pastoral Care and Counseling. And let me first of all begin with a very simple definition of pastoral care as defined by Edward P. Wimberly. He says, it is the bringing to bear upon persons and families in crisis the total caring resources of the church. While the church has many functions, such as worship, teaching, discipleship, evangelism, fellowship, administration, missions, youth and young adult, pace setters, and much more. However, each of these facets of the church can become the conduit, the tool, the vessel that God would use in fostering and manifesting a spirit of pastoral care. I often share with our parishioners that a church that does not care ceases to be the church of the Lord Jesus Christ. So at the very foundation of the church, care is so very important, and particularly during the time of death. Let me share with you 4 bullets that I use as I seek to care for others. The first one being healing, binding up the wounds. These may be emotional wounds, these may be spiritual wounds, repairing damage caused by disease or infection or invasion, and then, of course, restoration. But the second bullet is sustaining, helping persons to courageously endure difficult situations, helping persons develop another perspective concerning their crisis that will permit them to live the abundant life that our Lord has given unto us. I'm reminded of what Psalm 55:22 says, "Cast your burden on the Lord, and he shall sustain you. He shall strengthen you." And so I seek to help members to know that God is present with them, a very present help in the time of trouble. The third bullet is guiding. I seek to help persons in conflict situations make confident and wise choices between alternative courses of action that will help them solve the problems and the challenges that they are facing. The fourth bullet, of course, is reconciliation, wherein I seek with the help of the Lord to reestablish broken relationships between a person and God and between a person and other persons. All of these bullets are based on the Word of God. Let me share in more detail about the protocol as it relates to death. And indeed, during this time of a pandemic, we have discovered many things that have changed. As Minister Mahoney shared with you, we received the news of a death through many various ways, by word of mouth, through a text, through an email. However it comes, it is our responsibility to respond in a compassionate and caring way. And that is normally done through a phone call. And so upon receiving information, contact to immediately made to see how the ministry can be of an encouragement, how the ministry can be of a help to this particular family. A time is established along with place. Now, during this pandemic, that has been somewhat changed, and most of the work that is done now is through telephone. And for that reason, it may take a little longer to receive information, to share information. And while on the phone talking with a bereaved family, it is my opinion that this is not something that can be rushed into. It must be understood that family members will often feel numb and things may seem somewhat chaotic. And so you basically got to see where the family is and then join them where they are and begin to offer suggestions to them. With the first being, what type of homegoing do you want to have? And how can we as a church come alongside of you and help you in that? I've discovered in these last 2 years that many families have gone the route of graveside services. And even if they have a traditional funeral, they have to follow the protocol of the particular venue that they are using. Most places have a limit now as to how many people they will have on their premises. And so all of those things must be kept in mind. But while we keep those things in mind, we also have the objective of fostering care and compassion, sharing with them even to the point of Do you have a funeral home in mind? Do you have insurance? Was your loved one a veteran? What branch of service did they serve in? And I have found that oftentimes families are not aware of all of the benefits that they can take advantage of. And so that's my opportunity to share that. A letter of condolence is also typed and sent to the family, as well as to the venue where the service is being held, oftentimes at the funeral home, sometimes at the church. But that letter represents the membership. It represents Bishop. It represents the Kingdom team. It represents our official family and every member of the Park Church. Because we want you to know that while we may not be there physically, we are definitely there with you spiritually. I often also try to follow up with the family to see how they're doing in post-funeral. So often, families spend most of their time getting ready for the funeral. They really have not had an opportunity to grieve. And so that is when, again, I offer them many options, counseling, grief share, so that you can talk out what you are going through. And so I count it a privilege to serve in this capacity. I see myself as an extension of the Lord Jesus Christ, who sought to care for others. It's a joy to work with the team. We are a team, and we seek to work together. We seek to communicate love one to another, and most of all, seek to communicate love to the parishioners of the Park Church. Let me say finally, a thank you to our pastor for this opportunity to serve in this capacity, and I deem it a privilege and an honor. May God bless you.
Thank you so much. I'm sure you all will agree we have had a morning packed with valuable information. And we are going to have the opportunity to go to our breakout groups in order for you to gain information or ask questions of the panelists that we have had. But right now, I want to, before we do that and before we have the closing prayer, I want to acknowledge some people for whom we want to give thanks. First of all, thanks to our own Bishop Claude Richard Alexander Jr., for he has been the one that has provided this space for us to share with you. So certainly we are grateful to him. We are grateful to Studio P and our virtual ministers because they enable us to do this in this format. And we want to thank our planning team. The planning team consists of Dr. Major McGuire III, who is the chair of the team, Reverend Tazwell Henderson, Reverend Quinn Rogers, Minister Catherine Mahoney, Deaconess Tondra McLaurin, and me, Dr. Raynette Covington. And we thank you, and we're glad we've been able to serve in this way. Once I have done the closing prayer, Zoom information or ID should pop up on your screen, but I'm going to read it out just in case. The meeting ID is 826-2160-2693. Again, 826-2160-2693 with the passcode 112803. Again, 112803. So once I finish praying, then you should be able to go to the breakout group that you select. Father, we thank you for this day, for all that we have heard and felt. Help us all to not just take knowledge, dear God, and just hold on to it. But Lord, help us to apply it to our lives, to share it with others in our families and in our communities. We are grateful to all who have helped put this workshop together. We are grateful for all of the information that has been made available to us today. We thank you for all that you do in and through us. In Jesus' name, amen.